list of young stars who have popped up has not ended there, right? When you look at the difference between 2025 and 2026, the likes of Chino come to mind, right? He's completely turned around his reputation from going from, a young prospect to being one of the best in the world.
Yeah, I mean, 2024 didn't make Major 2, didn't make Globals, then went into 25 without too many expectations of performing well, but finished as one of the best teams in the world. Now going into 2026, those expectations are high, but will they match them, Reese?
I mean, you've got to think so. Like, coming off of the momentum that they had last year, of course, like I mentioned, a second, a first in the FNCS majors, and then a seventh at Globals, which was, still a fantastic placement. It wasn't maybe what everyone expected because they were contest of spawn. You've got to think that this established tier 1 team on the region, anyone's going to say that they're almost guaranteed a top 5 in any lobby that they're in.
I think when you say an established tier 1 team in EU, there is no team that is more established right now than Sky and Scroll. Again, another duo that has completely toppled over the traditional apple cart of top EU teams and have rightfully taken their spot at the top.
I mean, the numbers say it best. Average placement of 4. They've made 8 out of 8 Div Cups. They've won Div Cups. I mean, they play the meta incredibly well.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good example of just the fact that sticking together for a long time can really get you right to the top. You look at some of the biggest names in the world, and a lot of the times they're just gatekeeping. They have strats, they have off spawn, they have ways to get surge that we don't talk about too often. And, how do you get past that? How do you establish yourself as a tier 1 team in the region? You play together since February 2023, maybe with a little break in there at the same time, and you just build, you understand, you learn the game together, and then you reach the top.
I think it's interesting, right? Because we've obviously seen a bunch of these guys, these newer talents come through and shake things up, right? That's just a small example of some of the ones that have really come into the fray. But a lot of these veteran EU players, a lot of our legends, the players who have won so many championships in the past, are now starting to trust a lot more of these younger talents, right? If we bring up a list of some of the, veteran EU players who are now playing with young stars without much experience, Takata, I mean, this looks ridiculous when you stack it up.
It's insane. I mean, adding up the finals appearances from the legends here on the screen, it's 96 total final appearances, and the combined from their duos, this new talent is 8. I mean, that just shows the difference in experience, but I mean, I like to see it.
Yeah, I almost said 7 there. I'm glad you got my maths is almost very wrong. And, then immediately you ask the question, why would some veteran players be playing with new up-and-comers, especially when you think about the gatekeeping that's happened with the best players always playing with the best players historically. And I think it's safe to say that all the players we listed there are not peaked. They're all slightly on a downward trajectory. Like, you think of Tayson, he was the GOAT in Chapter 2. You think of Thomas HD, he's been around for so long, and he was obviously incredible by Globals, 2 years ago as well, but he had a little bit of a stinky last year, and I think you could possibly say the same for the vast majority of these veteran players there. So I think it's given them an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm not doing so great, so let's find some of the newest up-and-coming talent. And I think for most of these duos, it's safe to say that this has been a very good choice.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a recent thing happening here on EU. I was thinking to myself, what are some examples of us seeing this in the past? And it brought me to NA. I mean, Reverse 2K with Daymero, even Peterbot picking up Poyo. I mean, Poyo was a West player, went to NA Central, now global champions, one of the best duos in the world. And it makes me think that EU is kind of starting to look a little more like NA in that sense.
Oh, yeah. Man, it is changing, Reese, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. And it's changing, and you see a lot of these new up-and-comers, but I still think there's a lot of good examples of some of the best players coming from this exact scenario. I go back to, Chapter 3, and I think of Aqua, who played with Veno, who then just went on to one of the biggest runs and one of the best players in our region as well.
Yeah, we have so many fresh stars, and so if you're watching EU, look out for the new names you maybe haven't heard of before. They might just be the best players in the lobby. 2 stars who I know are going to make today's games so much more fun to watch are Mini Miner and Taco, our casters for the day. It's good to see you guys.
Feels great to be back, Levin. It has been a long time coming, but Mini, we have so much experience. That is very obvious when it comes to the EU region, and I would be remiss not to include Pink and Sato as another one of those duos that's just brimming with a lot of experience and a lot of potential development.
Yeah, the guys just spoke right there about EU legends, EU veterans, and Pink has to be one of those names you have to throw into that mix. I mean, looking at the 2024 versus 2025 for Pink, not quite as much success when it comes to the trio format. Had a really good start to the year in duos, and of course, my brain thinks back to when he played with Vico, all the way back when. Vico was sort of an upcoming player, had a lot to prove, and Pink was one of those players that really developed him and really nurtured that talent to become the player that Vico is now. Nowadays, Pink playing with Sato, widely regarded as France's most upcoming talent, most quality of player that they can offer. And I think he's almost in a similar situation to Vico was when he first started playing with Pink. So really excited to see what this duo can do both today, of course, in this competition, but even for the future of a player like Sato, who still has so much more to bring. I think this is almost like a perfect partnership for his career to skyrocket.
Yeah, I wouldn't even leave it as exclusive to the France side either, because Pink himself has been very open about sharing the fact that he even feels Sato to be, one of the top fraggers on this region overall. I believe, one time he mentioned top 3. So it's exciting to think about this pairing and whether or not they're going to be able to manifest some success here today, because obviously everybody has their eyes set on making it into the finals here, Minnie.
Yeah, and I'm looking at their drop spot on the map right now. They're sort of in between two of the biggest names. They've got Vico, Malabuka one side, Shark, Teeny the other side. Interested to see how they're actually going to manage their Storm Surge. Are they going to use those sort of low gravity effects in that area to try and go over to their teams? But there's so many more teams to break down, so let's go back to the desk to do just that.
Thank you guys so much. Look, Frankie couldn't be here today, and so I'm sure she will be so happy that they managed to weave Pink's name in there. She's always excited to talk about Pink and whoever he's playing with. And so let's talk about some of the players who are playing in this lobby, because Heat 1 is going to be a fun one, right? Of course, we have 5 games today. 5 game winners qualify for the major finals, and then we have the 5 consistency teams at the end of those 5 games. And everybody in EU seems to be saying, boys, that Heat 1 is the big one. It's the most stacked one. And we have so many big name teams. I'm looking straight away at the top left. Vico and Malabuka, they're repping big. They're big boys in this lobby. What are these guys doing right? What can we expect to see from them today?
I think one of the best things we can see from these guys is just playing the meta that they're given, right? If you look back to their strat through a lot of the last season where they did well, they had a couple of mistakes they were making along the way, but they were always playing Storm. They were deep in it. They had this great strat where they could rotate through and basically skip all of the early game. And that's because right now, this year we've not seen an FNCS with it yet, but there is the new net surge, so you basically need to not take damage. So a lot of the teams are trying to skip the mid game as much as they possibly can.
And what's interesting is they've completely changed that strategy from last season into this one. They are rotating early now. They're trying to stay in the zone and get there as quickly as they possibly can. They're pre-firing rotates, but it also means they are running out of mats, and they have to look for a decent amount of refreshes. But hey, they had the highest average elims in the most recent Div Cup, the second highest in play-ins. So they are doing a good job, but it can be a little risky.
Look, you can't talk about this lobby without talking about Shark and Teeny, arguably the favorites to potentially win FNCS, depending on who you ask. And when you look at this lobby, one thing you have to say is that they do have a bit of a hurdle to overcome, but it feels like this team constantly overcomes hurdles, guys.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Shark Teeny, look, if I think from the past season, there was a 6-0 against Huddy and Fishy. They left them in 50th. But the interesting thing is that in these recent Div Cups, there has been a bit more messiness. As you can see, they were triple con, to be fair, but right when one player gets knocked, all the surrounding teams in the area, they kind of pile in to Wonky. They kind of look hungry to see if they can close it out. So I'm curious to see how it's actually going to go today in Heats.
I could tell you how it's going to go. I'll tell you straight away, these guys are not winning a game, and that's through choice, right? They're going to be fighting off spawn against Hutty every single game, and I think 5 out of 5, they're going to be there doing the exact thing. Let's be real here. Whoever does good goes through to the grand finals. Shark and Teeny, best placement's going to be second, maybe another second, maybe a third second, maybe intentionally not winning. We'll see, so they can fight off spawn every single game. My prediction with these guys, if they do bad, they're going to go nuts off spawn. If they go good, they're going to go nuts. I think we're just going to see an absolute show with these guys. If they win a game and qual through, consider me wrong. I'll be shocked.
I'm pretty much going to back you there, Reese, on that one. I think we can't not talk about the #1 seed, right? The team that won the play-in stage that was before this one, Thomas and Focus. We already talked a bit about Focus and how he's a new starter, Carter. What else can we expect to see from these guys here?
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is, if you look at the duo Thomas HD and Focus, you'd think Thomas HD is kind of the star of this duo, but Focus almost takes that from him. He's tarping, he's IGLing this, but kind of the issue I see is the chemistry might not be there. They're both very good individual players, but it's almost kind of like the polar opposite of Sky and Scroll in terms of chemistry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the thing about this team is they are both star players. They are both some of the best players on the region individually. Now, we did say Thomas was coming off of a not-so-great year last year, but it seems like this year playing with Focus, it all is going well. And, I think as you alluded to well there, Taka, they are doing individually amazing things, the actual teamwork sometimes looks a little messy, but it always seems to work. And I think the good result of that is if you actually look at their placements in matches overall, across all of the 7 Div Cups that they've made so far, they've only won one game total. So out of I think it was, I can't do the maths on my head quickly, but 7 finals made, they've won a single game. So these guys are consistently making end games over and over, but one of them goes down and the other one clutches up a lot of points. So I think for today, we're going to see these guys just be one of those consistency teams.
Look, one of everybody's favorite parts about the play-ins and the heat stage is obviously the teams that can win games. I want a quick Hail Mary from both of you. Who's a surprise team you can see winning a game in this lobby today?
I'll be quick. I think Cringe Volko.
Ooh. Oh, that's a good shout, actually. That's a good shout, Scotland. Let's go. Truly Zynox, of course. They've been doing super good so far. Very underrated team.
I like where both of you are thinking. Plenty of talent in this lobby. We're going to see who can come through and shine. Let's hand it over to Taco and Miniminer to kick off the day.
Probably one of my favorite parts about this Heat 11, and I should say all of the Heats in EU in general, is that there is so much talent kind of just being captivated in every single one of these Heats minis. It's going to be very complicated to find yourself as one of the team-winning duos, or even just making it through consistency, because I'm even looking at the mini-map. I'm seeing Yapko Panzer. I also really want to back Reese with that Truly Zynox take, but there are so many phenomenal teams, and it's crazy to think that we have to decide on 10 of them here today.
So many great names. There's a real stacker of a group, isn't it? Chari Kami as well, another big name in there that we haven't got time to mention at the beginning of the show today. Also glad that Reese mentioned Zynox there. Welsh represent. It's always nice to see some Welsh players in the lobby. We don't get many, so you have to give them a shout out when they do. But really, really excited about today's competition. It's a really nice mix, this format of players and teams that are going to get a victory royale. They go straight through to the major finals, and it also caters to those consistency teams as well. So although we have already had a season in this chapter, we've already had a lot of Div Cups. When you get F and CS in the mix, when you put those 4 letters in front of a competition, things just change. You never know quite what you're going to get. So many questions here to be answered. I'm super excited.
All right, there's always going to be, this feels like the calm before the storm in all reality, because I know for these teams throughout the course of this weekend, even if you don't make it from Heats directly towards the Major 1 finals, they still have the opportunity to try and take their chances through that last chance qualifier. But obviously, many minor teams would much rather wage their chances right here, right now, and Lobby 1 ready to go.
Ready to go indeed. Here we are for game number 1 of Heat number 1. This is time, and this is the team's time to make their mark, to get their first step in towards our Major 1 finals, which, as we know, have even bigger implications when it comes down to the Major 1 summit. So potentially a huge leap for some of our teams here trying to make their way there. But lots on the line here, Taka. Lots of potential for some of these teams and lots of questions to be answered.
I think one of the first questions that a lot of people kind of had in their minds today is how are iDrop and Medius going to fare here at Dark Dominion? Strongly going to be contested by Lunex and Wolvax, and things are getting off to a hot start all around the map, though. Cryfalls eliminated. Velry and Chuck will pull out on top of the gas station, but still, Mini, it is evident there is going to be some sparks flying throughout this first match.
Yeah, really nicely done from those guys right there. Just had to finish that fight super quickly, so nicely done from them. Of course, you see the players lurking around. One of those, of course, is Focus and Thomas. Big team in the group right here, so excited to see what these guys can do as well.
Squibbly Shores, definitely a pretty well-renowned POI currently, but Velry, that initial kickoff start here. Thomas just trying to get some shots exchanged. The net surge switch up has been one of the bigger focal points, I think, leading into this season. So many teams just looking to try and establish their surge early on, but not take too many shots in return.
Yeah, so for those that don't know about that, it's basically just a net surge overall. So you want to be taking little damage compared to the amount of damage that you're outputting. So in other words, you want to do as much damage as you possibly can and ensure that you are taking as little as you possibly can as well. As here is Focus on Thomas from earlier on Riptides down towards the south. These guys are definitely a pick to potentially pop off today. The casters or the analysts talked about it at the beginning of the day, how they do have a little bit of this tendency to maybe make some solo plays, not have these coherent plays together. So very, very important to see how those guys can forge together today.
Almost surprised, though, to see Shark and Teeny not initially finding their prey of Huddy and Fishy. These guys have just been going non-stop between Huddy and Fishy. It has been a very frequent point of contention here at Wonkyland, and I have to agree with the Des very strongly. I am full-on anticipating Shark and Teeny to spend this heat exclusively trying to prevent their drop from being contested in the finals.
Yeah, we all saw what happened with them off spawn in those earlier Div Cups. I mean, Shark and Teeny were, of course, dominant, but you don't want to have that going to major finals. It's not ideal, so staying uncontested is absolutely vital, even for Vico and Malabuka up here at Frigid. A team that a lot of people have winning a game. They have so much pop-off potential. Things necessarily haven't been going their way this season when it comes to their, I suppose, potential compared to their output of performances. They've been good, but not great. So much on the line for these guys in order to prove what they can do. Everyone knows what they can do. Everyone knows the experience that they have. So lots of stuff to go for this team. And as well as Cammy and Chari, this is a team that, you know, have a lot of experience as well. Cammy, one of the most experienced players in the region in terms of Grand Finals appearances. So someone that you'd expect to be in the mix for Grand Finals.
And they've had a relatively quiet off-season too, so I think that's probably one of the bigger reasons why you don't necessarily see too much of the spotlight heading their direction. But we have another 5 potentially brewing here at Battlewood Boulevard. Peasy. I'm just waiting to see if they're going to have an opportunity to lap back around, but for right now, Nero and Joshbot with primary control of the building space, so I think they'll have good opportunities, but the lurk plays continue. Ziffy and Jerdy, they might have caught Twigs off guard here. It's going to be bad news bears for this Polish duo. And sure enough, Twigs immediately crept up on and just put to bed. That's an elimination for Jerdy and Ziffy. They'll be happy to claim. And now, Fnatic, he's got a whole lot to overcome here as a solo.
Yeah, really nicely played from those guys right there. Actually, just having that patience, just that trigger discipline to go for that 3-2-1. It's not difficult. It's not easy, I should say. It's very difficult to not just make a shot and just to get a little bit too eager with those shots, but combining really nicely there with that Chaos Reloader. Look out for that shotgun, of course, today as well. If you are watching Fortnite Comp for maybe the first time this season, that weapon in particular, lots of our pro players will be carrying it. Does super high damage, especially to the body from close range, and also reloads without you actually having to reload, so it almost reloads in the background. So lots of our players will use that as their preferred shotgun. You saw it in action right there.
Yeah, and for Wheaton and Frizzy, can't help but notice Humble Hill is one of the legendary POIs chosen for this first lobby, so that's definitely going to be a pretty big benefit for them. We'll have to see how they circle back to it. For right now, Quick, Bambi, all these duos caught up. A little bit of action here, but it's actually going to be Midro who's left in a solo clutch situation here. Right now, Fizberry making it very difficult for both of these teams to kind of get those final punches in, but Bambi is at least going to be able to confirm that first elimination, and I think for the time being, Adrix and Bambi, they're just content to take their spoils as is.
Yeah, important to win that off-spawn fight. Not as much loot as there was at Tip Top Terrace now, so that POI has had a little bit of an adjustment, let's just say. So slightly less loot.
Let's call it the logjam landing.
Yeah, well, yeah, you know, we've changed it up a little bit, which is it's always interesting. But interesting to see those guys, of course, now bounce back from that. Because of course, losing off spawn, they're having to disengage and get the reboot. It's not going to be easy at all.
No, that's for sure. But So many teams. I know one thing that has definitely been explored pretty heavily by a lot of our lobby leaders. I mean, circling back over to Shark and Teeny, they are chasing Turtle, running for his dear life. Overdrive grenades can only take you so far, though, and Teeny, Shark, what looked like they were going to be very adamant on pursuing Turtle. He will escape for the time being. So latte landing, definitely brewing with some trouble, but Shark, Teeny haven't had a chance to fully collect what they're after, and that could be a big part of the reason why. Dexy, Frosty overhead on that hillside. Going to be a pretty strong deterrent there. Don't want to get caught out in any kind of third-party circumstances.
Yeah, smart disengage there, actually. A lot of teams, a lot of lower ranked players, a lot of newer players maybe to competitive would just try and W key that, try and chase them down, try and get the surge. It's very easy to almost get sort of tunnel visioned on elimination and then end up getting third party, but because they managed to disengage there, Dexy and Frosty were not able to find any shots onto them, and in this current surge meta, it's super important to not take damage as well as much as it is to do it. So really nicely done from those guys, and proving why they're one of the best teams in the region right now.
Happy scene though at Battlewood Boulevard. 2 eliminations means that things have been successfully cleaned up, and that's going to allow opportunity now to play a little bit inside the storm. They had ample amounts of pizza slices, so it's very feasible for them to make a little bit of a later rotation and kind of make more of that dead side approach.
Pink Sahar and Seho Sahar. I was going to make a pun there, but I'll hold my tongue. These guys are in the sort of same area which they're dropping, so they can easily refarm and have a nice position. I like this sort of play here from Ping, just refarming some of the brick or Satos up top, trying to do a little bit of damage from up on top of that big surge base. We're going to see a little bit less of that, I anticipate, here, as we may have seen previously when it comes down to Storm Surge. A lot less teams maybe going for those huge bases as their only form of surge. Lots more potential W keying when it's necessary, because of course you need to try and do as much damage as possible, but also taking little is as important, as we've mentioned. And even playing Storm like a lot of teams are doing right here, and we're going to see a lot of this season. Lots of teams just trying to skip that mid game to not only avoid damage taken, but especially with those shotguns in the lobby that I was talking about earlier, it's so easy to instantly lose around 150 damage to an opponent in a box fight. So because of how strong they are, you just want to be avoiding that, and it's really nicely done from these guys, just playing in the storm and then getting on that dead side. It's good to see.
That makes sense for Blizzy and Heath to also still be a little bit wary of that lighthouse, knowing that that is a frequent location for Cammy and Hottie, and the amount of heals that they're able to collect there. It's pretty understandable to just anticipate they might still be lurking around. But for Yapko, Panzer, slightly different scenes here. A pretty elevated view means that they'll be able to keep tabs on everything that's going down inside of Wonky Land. You already see off in the distance there, Vico and Malabuka. So things could potentially start kicking up around that Ferris wheel, and whether or not Panzer and Yapko are going to be able to profit off of it, it's a story that's left to be told.
See what they can do from there. It's going to be interesting when you get these sort of northwest pulls. Lots of teams can use that Ferris wheel to rotate if necessary when you get towards those later sort of zones. As makes for an easy sort of dead side positioning if they want to.
Makes full sense too for Focus and Thomas. Just keep themselves protected, but now with Cringe and Twi starting to encroach on their position, maybe a little bit of pushback opportunities. For other teams though, the Storm does still seem to be the more appealing draw. Although you never want to be one of the last teams in the lobby. You always have to worry about getting focused when you actually make it into that edge of zone. But a decent amount of heals here for Lunix off those check splashes. Shark and Teeny, on the other hand, still pretty deep north. They've found themselves a little bit caught up right now. Health, not necessarily where they wanted to be, but they have the fishing hole to rely on for the time being. I think the bigger question is whether or not Nak and D can actually choose to push this a little bit harder. I don't think that they would feel all that comfortable with trying to force this engagement against Shark and Teeny, but forfeiting the fishing hole, I think, could be a pretty big blow. Teeny and Shark, they just seem like they're intent on getting as many fish as they can, though, before they make this next rotation, Mini.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do right now. Just fishing is definitely an option now. It's sort of buffed a little bit as of late in terms of this chapter, so fishing is very much on the cards, especially for teams that are looking to play that storm. It's very, very possible. They'll gift of a supply drop here. Vegeta and Maria. They're going to use it. Potentially not. Even know if they know it's there, actually. Are they aware?
Might be questioning whether it's safe to actually open up a wall to go for it. There was another duo very closely nestled by. So that could be part of the hesitation here, but Adrian and Vegeta, they'll sit tight. Twy and Cringe. Somebody's keeping tabs on where Vegeta's at. But we can see teams starting to become victims now to this net surge standard. If you weren't able to actually maintain your surge threshold, you're going to have to force some form of an engagement. And yeah, for Cringe Twy, they are well above the damage threshold. They're not too pressed, but Adrian and Vegeta, a completely different scenario. Their best option might actually be to try and force a fight with Twy and Cringe. They're going to have to jump into somebody's box soon enough. Don't think that they can just depend on the lobby thinning itself out, because Pixoxy, Saren, also breathing down their necks. Adrian, Vegeta, strike now or never. You're using up every single one of your heals just to stay standing, and only 126 below. That's just a singular shot that they need to connect to get above that threshold.
And zone's moving as well, so it's going to be really difficult for them to find that. And no, look at this, taking so much damage, so that number is going to continue to drop, as now they've got Surge to worry about, other players in the area, Storm to worry about as well. It's a nice shot, though, from Vegeta. Pixovsky finds an elimination as well, puts them just above, so that's the savior for them. Also inside the storm, inside of this mist, so they're going to try and make their way in as soon as possible. But so many teams here that are low on Surge are trying to rotate in late. It's going to make for a little bit of a frenzy when they make their way in, because they're going to start to look for some of this damage. And even 54 above here for Pixovsky's team, they still need to find a little bit more in order to be safe, because you're not just safe by doing damage, you also want to take a little less as well. So if they do get shot at, they need to try and offset that with some damage of their own.
They've basically just been trailing behind Cringe and Twy's rotate, but now Pixoxy, Saren hanging at the bottom of this hill face. Stuck here for the moment. Turtle and Cheeps, a refresh going to buy them some time also, but it's just not enough. Turtle and Cheeps aren't able to hold out. The lobby has claimed another duo. As more teams begin to pile in, the congestion is definitely starting to pool up here, but Cammy and Hadi, they've done a great job at elevating their position, managing to find themselves just a layer or two above the rest of this lobby. It seems like for a moment they might have had Teeny and Shark in their sights. They're at least fully wary of the fact that there are teams making their approach from that north side of the zone.
Yeah, nice position though from Cammy, just in the sort of center of the zone, able to look around and try and do as much damage as they possibly can if they need to. Giving themselves all the options as the zone continues to pull towards that north side. Pink and Sato 200 above, 0 eliminations for them so far, but again you can see Pink just sort of leading the way, making sure to use all of his experience to just tarp them as close to that zone as possible. They're not quite in though, so going to have to invest a lot of materials here in order to do so. Now only 119 above, 130 above now as it's ticking over. They do have to be wary of that as they do make this rotation.
It's the constant jumps though, right? Between 130 to 104. It's just too close for comfort. They're going to need to force a fight anyway. I believe that they are in dire need of some material if they want to try and close out for the end game and make a decent run of it. But Panzer, Yapko, a team that's living life a little bit more lavishly just outside where the thick of the mayhem's taking place, they are fully focusing in on teams that are already trying to duke it out between each other. And Panzer, Yapko, 635 above now on that surge threshold. They have the world at their feet. It's up to them to decide when they actually want to make their rotate. It's all about the positioning game for them. Same case for Thomas and Focus, doing a decent job at just managing their surge throughout each of these rotations. But this next zone pool, it's going to force everybody to expend a couple of these overdrive grenades, and the big part is just not getting tagged along the way.
Yeah, favorable zone pull for them there as well. Just pull to their side. Nice elimination there for Pink and Sato. Looks like they just about needed it with their storm surge situation. So that's 2 elims for both of those guys right now. But it's dropping, it's dwindling. The damage as the rest of the lobby is doing damage and they're taking some. They're only 1 above Taco. This is real dire situations for them. They just need to try and find themselves a little bit more damage to get themselves up, and of course then make that rotation.
But at least it's still above. Sometimes that's all you need. Vika Malabuka also sitting a decent spot here. And the main thing for this duo is just making sure that they clean things up around the edges. They've had so many circumstances where they've had prime opportunities to, I think, lock things in for that perfect top tier placement, perfect top tier performance, and yet they've fallen short when they least expected it. But this is big scenes right now for Panzer Yapka. A little look back into a successful elimination they were able to find prior to their last movement. Cringe and Twy, though, they've actually opted to put themselves onto high ground for the time being. Whether or not they're actually going to be able to maintain this is a separate question entirely, though. Their material count is running a little bit thin, but they do have a good amount of surge here, Mini. And the bigger point is just making sure they capitalize on suppressing everybody else that's struggling underneath them.
I love zones that end up here at the sort of northwest of the map, tip-top terrace or ex-tip-top terrace area, because those trees you can actually build on from any position. So if a team wants to sort of shockwave or overdrive grenade up towards those trees, they can actually build and just reclaim height whenever they want to. So when you're on height, you always have to keep your eyes up here and make sure that nobody's going to do that to you. As Biko and Malabuka just sort of on the lower side of things, Cringe and Twy up above. Look at this, Thomas HD down. Focus having to clutch up. Is he going to be able to get the revive here? Thomas trying to roll on over. Pressure from so many angles. Lovely plays here from Focus just to hold off all of that pressure, and Thomas is able to make it back safe and sound. The problem is now for them, they're going to have to rotate pretty soon, but I think they're going to get this revive off here, Taco. That's really nicely done from them.
And they at least had enough surge to work with that I don't think they're going to be too hard-pressed, aside from just dealing with the duos that are rotating behind them. You got Dexy, Frosty directly underneath where Focus and Thomas are currently located. Cringe and Twy, they've also got their signs to go. Gonna move on towards front side, overdrive grenade, but now looking a little bit slimmed out when it comes towards their mobility. They are going to have to depend on finding a refresh somewhere, despite the fact that they have so much surge damage. It is going to shut off for the time being. Now Medius and iDrop get a chance to check back in, see how things shaped up. They made it out of Dark Dominion, so that early off-spawn contest clearly not deterring them too heavily from making it into this endgame.
Here it is, though, Bambi and Adrix up on height. Really nice position for them. You can see it extending out to make as much of that high ground theirs as possible. You see Focus and Thomas looking up right there, maybe having a look to see if they can claim it for themselves. But Vico Malabuka down on the mid ground, really nice positioning from them so far. A couple of eliminations as well, but they don't have Bill's Taco.
They need the materials. They need to find a refresh, and you can tell that they are hunting for anybody that might be caught off guard inside of the backside of zone. But now Bambi Adrix, they're just continuing to rain down from above. Vico's going to be the first to fall here, though. Malabuka, last slice of pizza, has been consumed, and now with zero materials, he's going to have to make this edit out. Hope that he can find a big shot. Punk going to come through for him, though, and just a little bit of siphon materials. Every bit counts here. It's just one more lifeline. The placement points continuing to climb here because they need this now more than ever. They don't want to find themselves sitting through the entirety of these Heat 5 lobbies, but for right now, Malabuka still trying to make it happen all by his lonesome. Panzer way up above, though. Yapko and Panzer have decided to challenge Ajax and Bambi for height, and they're not the only ones hunting. Teeny and Shark right at the very end of it. Shots from overhead. Teeny gonna get the elimination onto Panzer, and one more time, Shark and Teeny continue to display why there's such a dominant duo in EU.
So high up, really nicely done from them, and now they're raining down fire on the rest of the lobby. Thomas and Focus back together as a duo after that clutch revive from Focus. Can they make their mark in this lobby? They need a refresh as well as they try and jump into the box on low ground. Can't quite find that elimination, though, as Shark and Teeny just continue to rain down fire from up above. Shark having to make a play down here as well, just trying to apply as much pressure as he possibly can, but Thomas HD down on low ground, getting all sorts of trouble from different areas. It's absolute chaos down there.
But you can never count out Thomas. He's always one to be able to find something from nothing here, as Thomas just continuing to sit inside of the Flowberry grenade, but still, Thomas hasn't been taken out. Last 4 builds, and Prism gonna be dropped straight to his feet, but Thomas needs those closing shots. Finally, the siphon gonna tick through. That's gonna be a big extension here for Focus and Thomas. They are cleaning through. This low ground is now Shark Teeny from overhead, trying to see if they can cement this first lobby. We didn't think that they were going to play it out for the victory round, and yet they're trying to make their standard known here. Teeny and Shark, full control of hype, but focus. Thomas, they might have something else to say about it. Shark's gonna go down. Thomas gonna go straight up. Teeny now scrambling in the low ground, but it's all Thomas and focus. Even without any shield, it doesn't matter. Thomas finding everything that he needed to, and he's gonna find the victory royale here in Lobby 1.
Wow, from the revive to the victory royale, they have done it. What an endgame for those guys. They were a little bit scuffed there in the beginning of that endgame. They had that knock from Thomas, but the revive came through, and oh boy, did they do that so well. Shark and Teeny, what a performance from those guys up on height. Hopefully a sign of things to come, but a great win from these guys.
Wow. I mean, look, I was ready to come here and just dunk on Rehab and just say, Rehab, you were talking all of this about Shark and Teeny not wanting to win a game, and out of nowhere, Focus just hits a crazy pump. We were bigging him up, Takata, of how talented this guy is, how big of a star he is, and he showcased it so well here.
That's what I love about this duo. You know, we've talked about the interesting aspects of this team, but what I like is they're both kind of hybrid players, right? Despite Focus, you know, tarping for Thomas, he had, what, like 8 eliminations when Thomas had 1, and in the end, Thomas clutches up. Like, both of them can frag. Both of them have that hybrid personality.
Absolutely, you know, huge stars, and they play that fantastic. You know, the main theme that we've seen from these two players is the fact that they've been playing solos over and over. One goes down, they make a mistake, and you know, we obviously saw that there was a slight mistake early on where Thomas got knocked, but they managed to bring this back so well. The actual end game they played was so clinical.
The ability to recover is always going to be a valuable skill, and one that they will now get to show off in the FNCS Major Finals. The first game win, one and done. And remember, that was the team that was first in the play-ins, right? The first seed, getting out of the lobby quickly. Very impressive stuff. Do you think we're going to see more clutches like that, Reese? Are you expecting more high-flying moments today?
Absolutely, there's no doubt. We saw a couple of really interesting high ground retakes, which we'll come back to a little bit later, I think. But oh my goodness, huge performance from them.
It's what you love to see. Look, I gotta step back on my word. I was saying the chemistry wasn't there before. Like, I'm sorry, okay? They showed what they're capable of very quickly to kick off things today. A little bit of the highlights from Focus. This is what I was mentioning. Focus is not only tarping, he's fragging at the same time. Now, you know, this can have its difficulties, but for game 1, it worked perfectly.
Of course, and you know, we talked earlier on about how the fact that all these old legends, these established players in the region are starting to come here and play with the new up-and-comers, and it's things like this. First across, of course, the play-ins, and now first here. You know, so far, Focus has probably been the best FNCS player this season. You know, we're only 1 game into the heats, you know, covered across the play-ins as well. He's obviously putting on a show for us.
I mean, I'm just so impressed by these guys and what they've been able to showcase. And one thing that's going to be interesting to follow out now throughout the rest of these games is traditionally when we talk about game-winning formats, a lot of the time the conversation is about high ground, high ground, high ground. These guys did it from the low. We're going to follow that thread throughout the day. We have more games coming up. Quick little break and we'll be back.
Taking from me, this one right here's only for me. My power should rise. and cut back to back. Oh, oh, just like that. I see a dub in my future stats. Oh, I know a place you can go. The doghouse outside my massive abode. It's lovely, it's cushy, and sometimes it's cold. And watch me get this gold. Oh, it all, own it all. How bounce back? I just want it all. I just want it all. Bounce, bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. Said you want it all. Bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. I can have it all. If you knock me down, I will feel the fall. I just got back up. Oh, bounce back. I just want it all. I just want it all. I'll keep bouncing. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. I keep coming back. I can't hold it back. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. I keep coming back. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. I can't hold it back. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. I keep coming back. Yeah, I'm bouncing back.
Wow, I mean, that first game did not disappoint. You always want to come into the heats and see the stars of the region, you know, battling it out, throwing punches before our grand final next weekend. And we got that with Focus and Thomas winning the game. But there were plenty of other big names who showed, you know, partially their best hands at times, other teams sort of fighting back. I feel like one of the teams we obviously mentioned at the start of the day was Vico Malabuka. We talked about, you know, some of the trials and tribulations they've had when it comes to the meta. And I feel like we also saw a bit of that in this game, Takata. Malabuka having to spend a lot of it solo clutching towards the end.
Yeah, having that kind of polar opposite playstyle from last season, where in this season now, they are going as fast as possible to the zone, rotating. They're not playing in Storm, but they actually ran out of mats quite quickly in this end game. But what's interesting to me is if you look back at the Div Cups, the best two performances from Vico and Malabuka were both solo clutches. One from Vico, one from Malabuka. And kicking it off today again with a solo clutch from Malabuka, I mean, it shows what happens when you put two EU Titans on the same team.
Absolutely. And, you know, as you noticed, while we're watching through this package of their match there, you know, when it got down to a solo, when Vico went down there, that was like top 20. And Malabuka was able to get all the way up to a top 5 here by himself. So unbelievable performance for both of those. And, you know, right now that's flown them up the leaderboards in the first match already.
Yeah, I mean, guys, we always sort of want to see teams have this consistency and this fluidity and this chemistry, but both of them can solo clutch that well, Takata. Should we be that worried about these guys?
Look, they definitely have what it takes. I'm wondering if they just want to get a bit of practice, and it's weird because when one player goes down, they just like the other just heats up. He fuels up. He gets like the energy from his fallen teammate and is able to power through the rest of the game.
Reese, we have to talk about Shark and Teeny. They held the keys to that lobby, it felt like, up on high, and they didn't quite open the door to the finals.
No, they didn't, unsurprisingly. I'm not sure why they didn't win this game, because I've never seen Shark lose one of those before. I felt like that was a little odd. And, you know, when I look back through, you know, all of the Division Cups, they have a 20% win rate in games. And, you know, they also have a 20% second rate. So you know what that means? That means they've actually never placed second in a Division Cup finals match before. And yet this is their first second here. I think that's strange.
Yeah, it must have been the wind. They were high up, you know, maybe pushed them off, something like that. But it's perhaps. Despite that, as a reminder, you know, they did make it off spawn. They didn't fight instantly, and they were able to get high ground, get to the end game, and almost have everything in their hand. But, you know, they're going to be playing out the rest of the day. We'll see if that trend continues.
Oh, come on, guys. We can't. I ain't letting you do this, Reese. You're not hitting me with this Shark and Teeny ain't trying to win gimmick. Shark got pumped in the side of the head. He didn't even know where he was towards the end there. We got to give Focus and Thomas the credit. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I was going to say, I'm just going to add a little bit on top of that right there. You know, you saw that. That was an insane shot from Focus.
It was.
You know, from the right side of the zone, sprint jump max. I'll take it. You know, maybe Shark just somehow didn't know he was there.
Yeah, I
mean, got a couple more games to figure it out.
That's the thing. It makes me excited but sad at the same time because now they're qualified, right? They got the VR. They're already qualified through, and we're not going to get to see any more Thomas and Focus till the finals.
Yeah, look, we spent a lot of time talking about a couple different teams, but we didn't speak too much about iDrop and Marius, and they are two bigger names in this lobby who I think have the potential to make waves here. What do we make of their first attempt here in game one?
Yeah, I mean, they played well, and in terms of consistency, they should have a decent shot. I mean, it is 10 duos that qualify through consistency, so seeing how they were able to play Storm, control it, and hit their shots, I don't know, Reese. I want to see it happen.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of team where this lobby should be easy for these guys. Like, let's be realistic. I think these are absolutely a grand caliber team. I don't think Heat should be any much of a struggle. And I think, you know, the first game, they already placed 4th with 4 eliminations. Like, I very much so expect that to continue throughout, you know, the rest of the games. It looked like they were going to be contested off spawn, but it seems like they've gone completely uncontested now in the mid-map. So, you know, if you look back through last season and the Divisional Cups this season so far, their biggest issue has always just been fighting a team off spawn. So now being uncontested, shown that they can perform in the first game, I think this is looking really good for them across the rest of the heat.
We'll see whether the lobby continues to shape up in their favor. Of course, we have one less team now in this lobby, and I'm super excited to see how the rest of the players react. We're going to send it back to Taco and Miniminer to kick off game 2.
Thank you so much, Levin. We are here now for game number 2. We've already completed game number 1, and it did not disappoint whatsoever. Thomas and Focus already booking their ticket to the Major 1 finals. It also begs the question, who's now going to be landing over there at Riptides, potentially an uncontested drop spot as some of our teams that are contested looking at you, maybe Hutty and Fishy potentially moving on over. Who knows how things are going to play out, but that's the beauty of this format. When one team goes through, they're completely out of the lobby.
Yeah, I am very interested to see what team actually ends up heading over towards Riptides. Wouldn't be surprised to see more than one team, too, maybe trying to stake their claim for the remaining lobbies, Minnie. But you have to remember, it's only 5 matches that these teams have to work with. So whether you have familiarity dropping at Riptides or not, maybe it's best to just try and replicate some of the success that we saw Focus and Thomas just have in game 1.
Yeah, it was really nice from them overall in their game, wasn't it? Their mid-game was played really nicely. The zone definitely played in their favor towards that west side, but they still had a lot to do there at the end and prove why they're still one of the top teams in EU, especially since Thomas has yet to win an FNCS title. I think everyone in EU is rooting for him to win one eventually, so maybe, just maybe, this could be their time. But again, on the drop spot situation, you can almost do a bit of a double bluff where there's maybe 3 or 4 teams now that end up landing there, or maybe there's no one landing there at all. It's always really interesting to see how that goes down. But game number 2 is on its way, so let's get straight into it.
Heat 1, Lobby 2, and a whole lot of action already taking place in that first lobby. But the point has been made, Miniminer. Even with Focus hitting a really sick shot at the end there on Shark, you really do have to wonder, are Shark and Teeny super interested in trying to prevent Hutty and Fishy from actually trying to claim a little piece of Wonky Land here? And the Ospawn fight, it's definitely going to get aggressive, but not in Teeny's favor. He's going to get picked off from Fishy, who just managed to find a really nice line of sight there. Now it's all up to Shark. Is he going to be able to push back instead? Might just be a full-on disengage. Doesn't have a shotgun yet, so it makes sense why he doesn't want to get up close and personal. And I don't know that the Twin Hammers are necessarily what he wants to stake everything on.
Well, remember, I mean, if what Resub was sort of alluding to is true, where these guys are trying to play the long game here in these games, that kind of relies on them qualifying through consistency or very little, or at the very least, winning game number 5. So if they are having troubles off spawn, this could really throw a spanner in their works in terms of their plan, because now Teeny's fully eliminated. They're going to have to get the reboot here as Shark, and now Hutty and Fishy are going to have that drop spot to themselves. So this is almost a perfect, a beautiful opportunity for Hutty and Fishy X to actually win this game. They need to make the most of this opportunity as it has presented themselves. So golden chance for them, and for Shark, he's got it all to do here.
I'd still be worried, though, in the back of my mind that Shark is lurking around somewhere. But other teams might be able to actually play a part in preventing Shark and Teeny from recovering. We'll have to check back in with them later on. Cammy, Hottie, they're still chilling, doing their thing. They've had full control of Squeeze Point Lighthouse for a while, and no teams really seem to be all that interested in trying to pressure them super early on. So for them, it'll be typical scenes, I think. Just farm it up and then focus on the rotates.
Chuck and Velry, though. Bit of a fight here at Squibbly Shores. It's all starting to get a little bit heated at the shores. I'm sure Cammy will be looking over it. There's really nice shots from Chuck in there. It is. That's fantastic. Already turned the tides on that fight. Got the elimination, but I think there's another team lurking on by here, Take. There's another team rotating on through, so the fact they're able to finish that fight so soon is really, really effective for them. And now they can continue to farm up, but they've got teams to the north, teams to the east, and teams to the west. Velry and Chuck have so much in terms of damage, they don't want to be losing any here.
Very reminiscent to what happened in game 1 there against Ken and Cryfall. So Chuck and Velry, they've certainly been hitting the off-spawn practice, that's for sure, Minnie, because being able to find another pretty successful elimination right off the bat just means that they now have a little bit more opening here. And they're trying to confirm the rest, but the Twin Hammer lurk in the corner. It's still not going to be enough. Velry does get knocked, though, and the third party now is going to intervene here. It's been an exchange, but Adrix and Bambi just completely caught Chuck and Velry off guard. Really strong eliminations to boot here, and he'll be able to get the revive.
Oh, they just didn't check that building before they rotated in there, and they ran through, and what was looking so strong for them in terms of their off-spawn success is now just all come crumbling down. And even for Adrix and Bambi, this is not done and dusted yet. There's another team coming on through as well, so not only do they have that little bit of loot there for themselves, we've also got to make sure that another team doesn't come on through and fight them for it, but the disengage is going to be coming through there, so they'll get away with it. But yeah, really unfortunate there for Chuck and Velry, who started so strongly. Now they've got a solo situation, so they're going to have to try and find the reboot if they can.
It'll at least keep their heads on a swivel heading into the third lobby. You always have to anticipate that things are going to be under constant development when it comes to this Heat format, and especially knowing that there's only 3 lobbies technically left after this one. So Vico, Malabuka. While we saw a crazy solo clutch at the end of game 1 from Malabuka, Vico would obviously prefer to be by his side, but things are starting to heat up here at Frigid Fortress. Chris and Cactus gonna make it very difficult for Vico and Malabuka to just freely farm things up. They've actually interrupted their loot path entirely.
Yeah, it's a tough one there for Vico. Of course, you have to understand your surroundings so much when you are looting like that as a solo, but you throw a bit of a spanner in the works for them, a little bit of a problem for them to deal with. It's XQ and ES White on the southern side of the map, on Boulevard. Looking pretty strong, looking like they've got a really nice setup here for the end game. Already an elimination to their name as well, stacked up on loot. Big pots, chug splashes, they've got the mist as well. Becomes so valuable in endgame. We see teams even using it just to get a little bit of extra distance on their shockwave grenades or their overdrive grenades in the mid game. So it's really vital.
Saw a possible lurk that might be unfolding there for Pixossi and Saren, but a lot of these teams, as they make their way through their rotates, surely going to be trying to shoot the bushes, checking your corners. We've already seen how many duos have been punished just at the very start of these first 2 games. Cheeps and Turtle, though, they're looking to have much better performance here in game 2. They had to deal with some issues last lobby, Sharkantini, but now they might not be having to deal with that pressure given the little bit of catastrophe that took place for Sharkantini early on.
Yeah, I remember they had a storm surge issue, didn't they, in their first game, because of course they had to deal with Sharkantini, and ultimately that was their demise towards the end, as the lack of storm surge going down in the later stages of the game. So hopefully for them they can both stay alive and find that damage themselves rather than being chased, and I think that's why they're changing things up, but switching it up over towards waves and effects. So here these guys are opting for a bit more of a traditional approach with Surge, just making a base on top of the clock tower right there. Able to find a lot of people in that sort of area rotating through, so plenty of players to look at. And Panzer and Yapko, what a fantastic duo these guys are, a particularly exciting duo. Yapko's very experienced in this sort of format as well.
The quick stat says it all for you, right? Qualified for finals of the Victory Royale in all 3 majors last year, and now Yapko, Panzer, whether it's a Victory Royale or whether it's from consistency, no one's ever going to complain about locking in their seat on the battle bus for the Major 1 finals. But Dexy, Frosty, they got a whole other world of problems to deal with right now. Dexy from the overhead, but doesn't get the shot that he was hoping for right away. Gonna have to use his last couple of splashes while Frosty looks to try and play a little bit of supportive measures here, but Dexy under so much pressure. Wurs now gonna take over the bulk of the aggressive front here. It's Frosty continuing to wrap around, just trying to back up his duo. But only a couple of pizza slices on Frosty. Whether or not he's going to be able to actually drop them from Dexy, but this is still much more of a stalemate than what had initially been intended there. Dexy just wasn't able to open up with that initial knock that he was trying to claim.
Yeah, really nice work actually there from Frosty just to turn the ties on that fight. It was, of course, Dexy was so weak right there. Of course, got almost surprised, but Frosty did so well to turn that fight on its head and do all the damage. A really upcoming and exciting fragger from the UK. Excited to see what he can do both today and, of course, in his career, playing with a really experienced player. But unfortunately, going down right there, Dexy has the response. Wurs needs to try and find a response as well. It's now 1v1 between Wurs and Dexy. Dexy's going to be able to benefit off of that mist. He hasn't got the positional advantage all the way down there in the dirt. Wurs is just playing with him, finding the opportunity, but it's so hard to see inside of that mist, but it's not a problem for Wurs, who manages to clutch up in the end and make sure that they can stay in the game, but a little bit more messy than they would have hoped there, Taco.
This is definitely still going to cause a lot of issues here for Wurs and Xantifi. Sure, you come up on top against Dexy and Frosty. Sure, the reboot ban is right there, but Storm is already pulling in. Zone is moving. Teams are also on the go. And now having to play recovery farm for the net surge that they were also susceptible to from that engagement, it's just going to cause a whole different type of issue for this team as they move in.
Casper and Prism here. Long-standing duo. I feel like these guys are sort of like a knife and a fork. You just always see them together. I think they must live in the same house or something, because they always are in the same team. They're always a duo. You can't mention Prism without Casper, and I like that in a team. I like to see teams that have stayed together for so long. The analyst mentioned it at the beginning. Sky and Scroll, another great example. They just seem to be able to share those strategies and develop together instead of worrying about what their fellow mate is going to be doing with that information. Very central zone, though, as you can see on the left side of the screen. So a couple of players and teams playing inside of that storm. And for Casper and Prism, they
A ver cómo está la internet. Vamos a ver cómo está esa querida internet. No, se va a poner mala. Bueno. Yo, mira, te digo una cosa. Bueno, a ver. A ver, yo creo que para que esta arma, yo no sé esta arma, men. Si alguien conoce el juego, nadie sabe llevar esta arma nunca. Ni la dorada. Es malísima. Pero bueno, yo creo que también como debe haber un poco de equilibrio. Igual si no hay otra, me imagino que al principio la agarrarán, ¿no? Pero miras. Ni una bala pegué. ¿Sabes qué? Me voy a tirar. Me voy a tirar aquí. Pues para variar un poco. Cantidad de gente, mano. Qué cantidad de gente, mano. Pero este va para... sí, a ver. No, maybe no. Maybe no. ¿Sabes qué? Quizás no, porque aquí... Aquí hay una tarjeta, creo. A ver. Ah, según yo, hay una tarjeta aquí. Creo que lo actualizaron esto ya. Vas que hablando de esta tarjeta. Hablando de esto, me dieron el... Pucha. ¿Qué pasó ahí? Me reventó. Que no me dejaron caer. En serio, mano. En serio, mono asqueroso. Qué loco.
They do have to make this rotation at a good time. There's still that team in Zucky down below them. But it's all about timing now for them. Are they going to try and get as central in as possible? How's their Storm Surge looking? Are they going to try and get in deep, or are they going to try and play edge? Let's wait and see.
Yeah, good things take time. For Artisan, Hero, they're definitely definitely trying to force the issue right now up against Blizzy. They want another elimination. They're going to need to work with both of them ideally. Heath and Blizzy, though, seemingly in the driver's seat right now for this current engagement, but HP bar is not exactly where you'd want them to be. Blizzy's going to have to come to a halt here. Just take this opportunity to heal up. Meanwhile, Ortiz, he's going to find the opening shot currently onto Heath. That much of a shutdown. He's going to send other team scrambling here. And sure enough, that's going to be the end of it. That initial shot onto Blizzy and Heath. I mean, there's really not much left to be said here. Just two teams forced to duke it out because when you have these elongated fights outside in the storm, you know that you're going to have a lot of issues just making your way into zone in the first place. So you've at least got to find some kind of confidence measures from big fights leading into it.
Yeah, and it's that initial shot, it's that initial risky play that you need to make as a fragger, and you need to make in those situations. You can't be spending too long in the storm, you can't be spending too long that far back from zone, otherwise your whole game plan, your whole timings just get completely messed up. So that massive play right there to knock Heath was a really, really nice one. And the sort of plays that can turn your game around, the sort of plays that you look back on and think, yeah, that was the moment where we actually managed to find a bit of momentum in the game. So you just need a bit of a risk tolerance there. You need to take those risks at the right time, and they did just that.
Other teams, though, still caught in little bits of a skirmish. 120 above only for Omix and Lethal, so that's going to lead them wanting to try and find some additional tags onto Golden, Cheesy, but they seem a little bit more preoccupied with just trying to create some space. Maybe a little bit of a lurk opportunity here. It depends on how Lethal actually chooses pan out of Battlewood Boulevard, but both of these teams relatively even in terms of their loadouts. They both have ways to sustain themselves inside of these early storm ticks, but when you move into the two-tick territory, that's usually a pretty clear indicator of make a decision, commit to either the fight or to the disengage and start rotating. Because at this point, you're just leaving your both of them are just going to be worse for wear.
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, when you're in that position, you need to try and finish the fight as soon as possible, get back into the zone, so that all of your game doesn't get thrown off, because you take a little bit longer in some of your positioning and some of your plays, and it kind of offsets the rest of your game. You spend a little bit too long losing, you spend a little bit too long in a mid-game fight, then you're late to end game, then you're getting farmed for Surge on edge of zone, then you're late, and it's just so much that has a knock-on effect. So it's really, really difficult to sort of turn your game around from that position. I mean, one way that teams will do it is just by finding a team maybe that's keying them, or they try and key a team that's looking a little bit weak and then just get all of their loot as they rotate on in. But of course, that's reliant on there being a team in that position, and it's really not easy to do at all. So for a team like Lunex who need to make their way in, they're just going to have to hope that there's no teams already set up inside a zone that could potentially attack them.
Campfire is going to buy them a little bit of time, at least away from that engagement that looks like it's starting to build. Thomas overhead for a moment, but it's going to actually be Cringe, Twy, Hadi, Cammy, just all kind of simultaneously trailing each other. Vico with a little bit of a lurk around here, gets a couple of opening tags. 76 above only. Frigid Fortress has definitely been very problematic just for them finding their opening surge. It's always a little bit difficult too when you're waiting essentially at your POI for the teams to start pulling in, and just knowing that they were challenged so early on by another duo. That could be a big contributing factor for as to why Vico and Mali find themselves much lower on the threshold charts than what they want to be.
Yeah, and even when zone just pulls towards your POI, it's can be quite difficult to get those Storm Surge tags when you're rotating along. It can be a little bit easier. You can find teams on that rotate. It's a little bit more difficult when you do pull zone like that, although you do tend to take less damage, so a different way of looking at it. Kyrian, his teammate here, just on the edge of this zone. They still need to make a little bit of a rotation here, Taco. It's not going to be easy for them. There's so many players in front of them. And still a ways to go. Even though it's not a long distance, there's still so many people inside of the zone. And when you're below Surge, like Jux and Unex are here, it makes it even more difficult.
And even when you are finding yourselves just barely netting yourself slightly above that search threshold, doesn't matter because Panzer, Yakko, they're going to find truly on this last rotation. Another duo that was desperately in need of some damage, now going to find themselves surging very quickly upwards towards that 471 above the damage threshold, but now they are still caught inside of a lot of congestion here, Mini. So it's not like they're going to have any sort of freebie rotates from this point forward. Zynox also still lurking, and knowing that there's other teams heavily pressed, needing that surge damage, he might just be sandwiched between two duos as a solo, and that is worst case scenario. But he can maybe still make some magic happen here. Either way, Panzer, Yapko, they are not content with their current position. Kind of just having to spread things out as much as possible, claim whatever space they can. They're definitely still hunting for more.
Nicely done here for Gotti and Kiri. We were able to find the elimination, and of course when you're in this sort of position, when you're in this zone, you've always got to be looking at where that next zone is going to pull. You see Pink and Sato all the way up on height, and it actually does pull all the way back up the hill. So for all of those teams that are down below, that were struggling, that were looking and hoping that that zone doesn't pull all the way back up to that snowy area, unfortunately for them, they've got a bit of a trek up that mountain to make. And for teams like Pink, you'd expect it with the experience. They're in a really nice position to look down on the rest of the lobby.
And they're not the only ones. Teeny and Shark also very much taking up an aggressive position, just preventing teams from cutting through their elevation point halfway up this mountain face. Teeny, Shark just continuing to apply steady pressure. Kamihari gonna have some struggles here. Cringe takes a massive tag there, and that's just gonna open up the doorway now for Teeny and Shark to have a little bit more luxury for making their own play upwards. Overdrive Grenade maybe didn't send them as far as they were hoping, but they still managed to move forward, and Casper Prism falling directly into their clutches. A direct 2v2 that's going to go very heavily into Teeny and Shark's favor. That is a clean wipeout and a very big, 5-5-5 for Teeny practically. This is the perfect position for this duo.
Casper and Prism trapped Teeny. They full boxed him on that rotate. You saw them with that overdrive grenade, but then somehow Teeny manages to turn it over, and there's another one, another player inside of the box. That's Vegeta that managed to find their way in their box. You don't want to get in that close quarters combat with Teeny and Shark because they will put you down, and that's their third elimination of the game, all in the span of about 30 seconds. This is what happened. Look, they full boxed him, but no, a quick turn from Teeny gets that 158 shot. Shark is right by his side to take out the second player as well, and there goes Prism and Casper in a matter of seconds, but it's absolutely bolstered Shark and Teeny.
That's the dangers of dealing with players rocking that Chaos Reloader. A big part of the reason why it's been such a heavily regarded weapon in this meta. But now Vico, Malabuka, still doing a little bit of a recovery tour themselves. 283 above the damage threshold. Still have a pizza box to work with too, and a good amount from that Chug Jug, but way up above. Lunex and ASP looking to try and make some claims on the high ground. They're elevated, but you've also got to make sure that you're preventing secondary hype from having opportunities to look at you. Panzer and Yapko, unfortunately, though, they're not going to be able to stay standing on this one. These elevation shifts are just brutal for teams running through material.
And you can see where the zone pulls just down that hill once again. It's topsy-turvy. It's really difficult to manage when you're on that low ground. But with a team on height, that's the absolute dreamland situation for them. It's all about the elevation changes that make all the teams down below use up all of their materials. Vachari right now still got it all to do. Lower on HP, back with Cami though on the bottom of the screen right there. And even Shark on the top right having a little bit of trouble making their way in. But all of those materials coming to play right now after those early eliminations. That's crucial for them. You can see them just playing that front side really well. But for now, it's the team on high. It's Lunex and WX.
Oh, we're just comparing rags to riches here. Shark, Teeny, they've got everything at their disposal in comparison to Cammy and Hottie, who are quite literally only working with weapons. But Cheeps, Turtle, they've decided they want elevation for themselves, and they're going to claim it. That Flowberry Fizz, the overdrive, going to take them surging upwards. And they've got an okay amount of material. Still would likely prefer to have more builds here, but they've been chopped. Mini, fortunately, they have a Flowberry Fizz, so they won't be eliminated from fall damage, but height completely topsy-turvy one more time. Turtle comes crashing down, big tags, but now the material count is a problem. As Hottie, Fishy, that earlier success at Wonky Land, they know this is their best opportunity to prevent themselves from being victims of the Shark Teeny grinder.
And And look who's on second height, Shark and Teeny. They need to try and suppress them as much as possible. It's their main opponents in this lobby. It's their main opponents when it comes to the major finals. If they make it there, could we see the 2v2 of all time right now? As Sheeps and Turtle did find their way up on high ground, but it's all come crumbling down for them as they now have only one player in the duo, I believe. So now it's all about Hutty and Fishy X. This is absolutely vital for them that they make the most out of this game. If they can win it, that would be huge for their chances here. But here comes Teeny inside the box. That's not where you want to find yourself, as there's an elimination already coming through onto Cheeps. Teeny and Shark making their way through these mid-ground layers. Shari goes down there as well. That's their 6th of the game. They're just an unstoppable force right now.
It's just a familiar sight, but Shark, he's going to be put down. This is worst case scenario now. Teeny has to go as a solo. Doesn't even have time to think. Can't go for the revive. He's going to be forced to play this one out as a solo. And Hutty, Fishy, they're still so healthy. They're on height. Medius and iDrop, though, they seem like they're really making a serious control play through these mid-grounds. No one has managed to run into them just yet. It might be Teeny that falls into their clutches if he's not careful. Midro now towards the back of their tunnel tart, but Midro is going to be able to still create some space, just taking his time, but he has to follow the zone. He doesn't have any options here. Jumps forward. Teeny has been claimed, though. Medius and iDrop, they're going to be the ones that try and take over in these low grounds as the elevation continues to pull down. Hutty, Fishy, they'll be forced to drop.
Yeah, the zone has actually pulled back over all the old builds, so for the low ground teams, they have a bit of space. For the high ground team, for iDrop and Marius, they're continuing their absolute domination here on the mid to low ground layers. That's a huge refresh for them to keep them going. For Hutty and Fishy, they're needing to try and find their way down as soon as possible now as well, as now it's down to the top 4. One solo, Twite and Cringe in the mix as well. They've still got it all to go down on this low ground, but the elevation changes aren't going to be easy for them. iDrop hits a huge shot, having to retreat as well, as Marius is still there too. iDrop goes down and Marius has it all to do on his own. Cringe is on the other side. Marius can't get his shotgun reloaded, so he's going to have to drop all the way down. It's absolute chaos right now on low ground, where Hutty and Fishy are just able to rain down fire from up above.
And Fishy and Hutty, they're just so healthy. They're finally going to start to make their descent here, Mini, but I believe the damage has already been done. Matty is just so incredibly low, hardly had any materials to work with. It's whatever he could siphon off of Mitro's body, but Fishy, Hutty, they're going in for the final blow here. The victory round right at the tips of their fingers nearly slips away, but Fishy will find Medius despite a well-placed shot there at the end. It doesn't matter. Wonky land. It started off hot here for Hutty and Fishy, and they're going to be able to capitalize on that opening sequence, Mini.
I mean, what a story. Hutty and Fishy, they needed to make that game count. We know that they're the inferior team when it comes to off-spawns based on history against Shark and Teeny. They had one win off-spawn the second game. They needed to make it count, and oh boy, did they do just that. Now it might be Shark and Teeny uncon. Who knows? We'll see what the analyst tests think.
Well, that has thrown a massive spanner in the works for Shark and Teeny. If you are a Shark and Teeny fan, you won't be happy with that conclusion. But if you're a Hutty fan or a Fishy X fan, you will be jumping to the moon. That was the game they needed, Reese. I mean, it couldn't have gone better for them now.
Literally could not have gone any better. Looking back at their play throughout the last year, well, this year, they haven't had a single win in Divisional Cup Finals. They've not had a single top 10 in Divisional Cup Finals. And when it matters, they pull out the Victory Royale. Now, this is so important, not just for today, but as you mentioned, for Grand Finals, because the biggest team predicted to win, as we've talked about at length, as everyone's talked about at length, is Shark and Teeny. And now coming to Grand Finals, they will almost definitely be contested by Hutty and Fishy.
This is going to be interesting. Only to add on to that, Reese, they literally got 50th in last season when they got 6-0'd by Shark and Teeny. Now, if Shark and Teeny make it, which is basically, you know, I'm not guaranteeing anything, but if they do, we're going to have a fun major finals.
I mean, guys, we were talking, right, during the game, during the off-spawn, and I said to you both, I was like, the most ironic outcome for Shark and Teeny here would be us all bigging them up, hyping them up, talking about how, you know, they're not going to win a game so that they can make sure that their competitors don't actually win a game, just for the competitors to sneak through and win a game, and that's exactly what ends up happening in the game, Reese.
Yeah, it's really funny because, you know, we were watching that end game and it comes down to it and you see that first, Shark and Teeny are looking scuffed. Remember, they did go down off spawn and get the reboot in. They got a bunch of refreshes to get back up, and it looked like it could be a potential 2v2 between both teams. And I was like, what if what if Shark just throws it? And then the team they throw it to ends up being Hutty's team and they go through. Obviously, it didn't need to go to that anyway, because Hutty and Fishy played that fantastically, but it would have been funny.
Well, look, we have so much to look at as far as the leaderboard is concerned. So we're going to go to a quick break, and when we're back, we'll break all the action down from that game. After a surprise second game win from Hutty and Fishy, we have to talk about where that leaves the rest of the lobby. And I think we have to start with their off-spawn rivals, Shark and Teeny. Unfortunately for them, right, doing great on the leaderboard as far as consistency goes, right? Obviously, those top two players have won games, so they are first in consistency in this lobby, Takata. And I guess the silver lining is now they're uncon off spawn.
Yeah, I don't think the first is going to last long, and I'm not saying it because I don't think they're going to make it. I'm saying it because I think they're going to win a game, and it's going to be quite soon, Reese.
Yeah, even if they don't win the game, like, they have all the potential in the world to. I think if they just manage to get some points in this, they've probably managed to qualify through inconsistency. Anyway, it's, 10 teams who make it through. They're first by quite a large margin. They're ahead by like 70 points already. So for these guys, like, being uncontested up spawn, this should almost definitely guarantee them to qualify in this next match.
Yeah, what impressed me too is there was a moment, because I believe Teeny had to get rebooted. They were at like 50 above Surge, and in the span of 1 minute, they were 800 above Surge. It just shows how dominant this duo is in terms of fighting. It's honestly impressive.
I mean, looking at the highlights from this game, both of them were showing out. And look, I know I'm not the analyst today, right? I'm just the quiet
the wrong
host.
seat, man.
Yeah, I clearly am. But I do have to say, their playmaking ability is just next to none. Shark and Teeny just pull things out of nowhere. They're going to be a fun team to watch for the rest of this lobby. We have to talk about the team next beneath them. iDrop and Marius in 4th place, second on consistency so far in this lobby. I guess they've been a bit of a surprise, you'd have to say, Takar.
Yeah, I mean, leading up to this in the Div Cups, I wouldn't put them in a top 3, even a top 5. And then now back-to-back 4th place, 2nd place, 5-4 elims. I mean, they're, in terms of placement, more consistent than Sharktini. Obviously, not as much eliminations, but with the shots that Hydrop was connecting in these final moments, I'm excited to see how it plays out throughout the day.
Yeah, these guys are the potential team. They've just not really been able to put that into practice yet, right? Throughout most of the times, as we mentioned earlier, they've been contested off spawn and struggling. This time, uncon. And I think watching the end game, there was a little bit more move there by some of the clips we've seen, right? A lot of the times, you know, you see players panic in end game, but I really love what I saw iDrop doing there with the nice right hands, taking super safe peeks, not doing anything too bad. And that's the kind of stuff you've got to do if you want to make it through to every single end game, right? They've had a 2nd and a 4th now. That kind of consistency just doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah, I'm sure Fredoxy is somewhere out there hate watching and really upset with how well iDrop is currently playing with Marius by his side. Guys, again, both of those teams looking really, really impressive. But again, we're seeing even more from some of these teams here. Again, if we look at the standings, is there anyone that's popping out to you as a team we need to really start to watch out for here going into these last couple of games?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of interested in what happened to Vico Malabuka. I mean, also Cringe Twive's been impressing me on his placements, but Vico Malabuka specifically, the zone in this last match literally pulled to their POI. The issue is they got, like, what, 15th? So they didn't make it too far into the end game. We've seen that they kind of go for refreshes early on, and I'm wondering if due to the zone pulling to their POI, they might be more accustomed to like rotating through their tags, and it might have been a surge issue. I'm not even sure what ended up happening, but I would have thought they would have got a better placement with a zone like that.
Yeah, so I think what ended up actually going on there was the fact that they ended up running out of mats, but you did see there in the refresh, they got a nice refresh. They did a clinical Malabuka play, which was a pre-edit. You always see it. It's just every single time going back to like, what, chapter 3, they're just known for the pre-edit plays. They got a nice refresh, but the problem is because they demand to get so many refreshes, so many fights, because they use so many mats, they were so low, that puts them in the backside of the zone. So when you're stuck at the backside, you have a rough rotate to go to the front, and we saw there they tried to go straight forward, stuck into someone else's box, and it just didn't work out.
Cause for concern potentially, Takata, with these two now?
Look, I'm not concerned. The thing I'm more concerned about is in the major finals if we get there, right? You know, this is heats. I see Vico and Malabuka as a duo that's much more capable than to qualify. I want to see how they perform in the major finals. So let's see throughout the day if they fix those kind of little risky mistakes that they're having.
You're saying throughout the day, Takata, they got to do it right now. We have game 3 coming right up. Taco, Miniminer, take it away.
That's right. We only have 3 matches left to work with for our duos here today, Minnie. And there's certainly some very noticeable teams that aren't even within that consistency qualifying threshold. So the fire's got to be lit underneath them currently because they don't have a whole lot of time left to work with to make something big happen.
Yeah, it's now or never. I mean, really, you know, you've got to make these next 3 games count. You could be thinking in the back of your mind, oh, we got last chance, we got last chance. Think about all the great teams that haven't qualified through to heats. So it's really, really important that they take the most of, or make the most of this opportunity and take their ticket, if you like, into the major finals. I think there's a few teams that I'm expecting to get a win still that are still in the lobby. And even for Hutty and Fishy X in that last game, what a shock, what a narrative, what a story that really was. Sort of looking at Sharktini saying, yeah, they're playing the long game, and then the team they were trying to play it up against actually ends up winning the sort of half off spawn and then winning the game. That's what this game can do. And now, what do Sharktini do? I think that's my biggest question here. Are they going to just go and win a game here? Are they going to stay in for more practice? They're 3rd on the standings. I don't think they'll really mind.
I mean, we'll find out momentarily, though, because game 3 underway.
Game 3 is underway as we hop back on board the battle bus. For an important game for so many teams, I think this is the point in the tournament now in the heat where you want to be sort of evaluating your overall standings, not just literally on the leaderboard, but also where you stand in terms of your overall gameplay. Are we looking for a victory royale here? Are we looking to try and play a little bit more safe and try and go for those placements? We shall see. And again, big question's going to be now at the Wonky Land POI. I assume it's going to be Sharktini uncontested, but we'll have to see. And it looks like the whole situation here for Cryfalse and Ken is going to be an uncontested one, is it? Yes, it does seem like it is. So that's that fight sort of been be seeing at the beginning of the games. Chuck and Velry were sort of in that area fighting them. It doesn't seem like that's the case right now.
Maybe they just weren't fans of how they ended up being third-party victims themselves in that last lobby, but still a quick grab and go for Cryfalls and Ken. They immediately try to encroach upon where Velry and Chuck are fixated. Panning back over to Wonkyland. It's just going to be Shark leading the charge, kind of hoping that they're going to be able to get some quick success here, Mini Miner. While practice is great and all in a Heats format, I would imagine that these teams would much definitely prefer to just have their spot locked in, good to go. It's no longer about trying to prevent anybody else. I mean, your arch nemesis has already found their battle bus seats for the final, so you may as well just see it through if you can. It's not going to be a walk through the park by any means. There's still a lot of great contenders in this lobby.
I suppose they almost want to still stay in the lobbies for as long as possible, because if they were to win this game, for example, then another team that maybe is having a bit of a tough time, somebody else, right, is going to land over at Wonkyland. They find some success there. They go ahead and win the game. Then it turns into a situation where they might want to land at Wonkyland for grand finals. So you want to make sure that you're having the most chance of success there as possible. So I do think they'll probably stick to their overall strategy, particularly since they're third on the leaderboard right now and they're first on consistency. No real reason to shift that, but definitely a storyline to keep tabs on throughout the day. And Pink and Sato also in a good position. But Focus and Nakale right there, just taking down someone inside of that sort of area. So I think it was after Pink and Sato actually left, so not too much of a problem for them.
Blizzy and Heath, though, they're also trying to prevent themselves from being eliminated very early on. They got caught up in a fight in the last lobby that definitely lasted way too long, and while they were on the negative sides of that, the consequences obviously of being eliminated early on. 21 points. We are technically at the halfway point for our 5-game format here in Game 3, Mini. So the biggest takeaway is that some of these teams, they might start to feel like they've got to do something drastic, teams that feel as if they're too far away from being able to measure up on the consistency threshold. Well, go big or go home. It's all about the victory royale at that point. And so that could really, really be a tough circumstance, I think, for some other teams to overcome, because I am fully expecting some of these duos to just send it with no regard to what happens for anybody surrounding them.
Yeah, and I think that's particularly potent in this meta that we're in right now, because it is just so easy to make a crazy hype play, because you just get a miss grenade, get some overdrive grenades, chuck them both down, tally ho, hope you can get height, see how it goes. Like, it is a very much more of a sort of, you can just jump on height, and it is one of those sort of gung-ho metas when you can just sort of try it out and see how it goes. Even I can take height sometimes, quite luckily. So it's just one of those where in these later games, there are teams that maybe don't have as much experience on height that will just make a play for it, because it is so easy to do so if done at the right time. Here we go, then. Sneaky beaky. Oh, foiled in the back. Lunex and WX. We saw these guys having a good game last game. Up on a high, of course, got chopped down as well. And they tried to make a play there, but luckily for Anti and Metal, this is a good situation for them. That team was actually able to foil their plans, because that could have been a bit messy there.
Yeah, but Lunex and Wolvax, they're not out of it just yet. They're still being a little bit pressured here. 2 different directions as well. Rip Tides, though, this is part of those mid-tourney developments that you expect to see. But Shark, Teeny, they're going to get aggressive right now with Pink and Sato just outright barreling down onto this box fight here. But Sato doing an excellent job at just helping to push them back. The material count just a little bit thin here, though, for Pink and Sato. And Sato actually going to find himself eliminated. Shark just gets the better end of this young Fragger debate. And currently, there's nowhere left for Pink to run. So Shark and Teeny are going to force that early departure. They've had Wonkyland uncontested. They just didn't like the way that Pink and Sato were looking over.
Yeah, that was a really nice play. I mean, that's sort of almost epitomizes and showcases what this new sort of wave of Fortnite is about. You know, some of the more successful teams are 2 fraggers. You know, and that's definitely the case of Shark and Teeny for Pink losing Sato so early on in that fight. It was not an ideal situation for him. Clutching up on your own is really difficult regardless. Clutching up against Shark and Teeny on your own is a complete other question. And got Anti and little bicep right here. We just see them go down on this south side of the map, looking to almost turn the tides on what was happening earlier on with the sneak play from Lunex that didn't work out. They're playing the Storm. Lots of players will be trying to do this. It's all about having the Whites, having the plan in action in order to actually make this happen.
Well, this duo is going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting if they want to find their success in Heats 1. Panzer and Yapko, though, already taking over a little bit of control by the vending machines outside of Sandy Strip. Have to remember, from that overhead view, Painted Palms was one of the legendary POIs in this match. So for Yapko Panzer, that could be a pretty huge benefit. And whether or not they're actually going to be able to make do with everything that they were given from that starting point, now would be the time for them to really kick things up a notch, though, Minnie, because 40 points on the leaderboard, they've definitely got to go for a pretty huge amount of placement points, if not a win.
Yeah, one of the more experienced teams in the lobby, though, so you'd have to imagine that they can get it done for Lunex and WX. This is where they've almost turned around. They said, hold up, we're turning around and we're actually going to finish off this fight. As they're finishing off what they started earlier on, they tried the sneak play, didn't work. Then the other team always came back for seconds, but Lunex and WX just proved why they were trying to make that sneak play in the first place, to try and get all that damage. Now they've got some loot to boot as well. They are so far back, so interesting to see how they actually manage this rotation. A couple of overdrive grenades in their inventory as well. So it's not a terrible position to be in now that they've got that surge damage. Of course, they're not going to take too much damage now they're back in that storm, so don't mind that at all.
Zippy and Jerdy, though, this is an exciting duo just because of where they currently sit on the leaderboard. Mini, 98 points. I mean, doing an excellent job at finding their rhythm for consistency in today's competition so far. But the main thing is you want to make sure that you also finish strong. And for a duo in this type of position, it becomes really difficult, I think, you don't want to overanalyze the choices that you are making. You don't want to find yourself, you know, getting a little bit out of pace because you just think, man, we're this close to qualifying for the Major 1 finals, and then it all falls apart at the seams, right? So it's just about maintaining that consistency, and it can be difficult because there's just so much pressure, I think, riding for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, especially for someone like Ziffy, who hasn't actually made a grand final before, is maybe not been in this position where you're on the cusp, you're in the position to do something that you've never done before. It's for players like Andy and Chari, they've done it, they've been there, they've done that. They understand what to do when they are so close, or even when they're a bit further down. They understand how to manage their emotions from a personal standpoint as well. They just understand what to do. Whereas for a team like that, where you do have that slight inexperience, it can make things a little bit more frenzied. But for Teeny and Shark, they are not stopping on their endeavor to just plow through this entire lobby. So important for them to, of course, get through to the major finals, which I'm sure they will do. It's just how are they going to do it? It's going to be the question. Cisse on the other side right here. Shark and Teeny both trying to navigate and clamber up these stairs. Cisse actually able to get away here, just about trying to make his move, but Teeny is right on top and finds the elimination really nicely as well. Nice cone in there, just preventing Cisse from having any exit. And that's Shark and Teeny doing what Shark and Teeny do best.
I feel like I'm watching a Shark and Teeny like rage montage currently after seeing Huddy and Fishy fall through, especially knowing that it's just because of things going a little bit sour in one lobby.
Wow.
One critical moment is all it takes, and now Shark Teeny, they have just been relentlessly aggressive. I mean, it starts with Pink and Sato, and I don't think it's going to end with this most recent duo either, Minnie. I am full-on expecting Shark and Teeny to just continue trying to rack up as many eliminations as they can muster.
I mean, an unleashed Sharkantini like that, you just,
Right.
that play is scary, right? You know, the ability, the confidence they have to make plays like that, to overdrive grenade plus mist up onto height and then take down the player on height and then just chase down Cisse no matter what. That's the sort of team that you do not want to be coming up against. So as much as it's going to be exciting to watch, the other teams in this lobby have definitely got to watch out for that. As we get to see Teeny and Shark doing it again. Every single time we switch to Teeny and Shark, it's a replay or a highlight or just them getting another elimination. It's like, do they ever stop?
At this rate, no. The only way it's ever going to stop is if they find themselves with a far zone pull, but with the way that things are shaping up, many that does not seem to be the case. They are on a full crash course. Everyone else in the lobby likely seeing that elimination feed continuously light up. So the last thing you want to be is directly in their route path, basically.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to gauge which direction they're actually going to be coming from, as Medius and iDrop just getting some nice shots assembled there. But at the same time here, Mini, they've been doing a great job holding things down for consistency.
Yeah, another couple of really experienced players. I mean, iDrop's one of those players that always seems to make it to major finals and grand finals, but doesn't quite have the performance that maybe sort of bigged up to have at the beginning of the season, and looking so sharp, looking so strong at these stages of competition. So I'm really hoping, if it isn't in this major, for this entire year, just to see a different side to iDrop, where he is starting to dominate slightly more in the major finals if they do make it there. So excited about that duo, excited about the potential that they have. Of course, Marius is one of those players that we just know by now. Of course, he's been through that whole up-and-coming fragger, up-and-coming player phase, if you like. You know, he's very much cemented in the furniture of the EU region right now. We know what to expect from him. Likewise with VK. Malabuka, they've had their ups and downs this season. They've had some trials and tribulations, if you like, but it's definitely not understated how talented both individuals are. We saw it in that end game, even just trying to recycle and trying to recover, I should say, some of their games. They just have those pre-edit potentials, pre-edit opportunities that we know Malabuka for. So that experience can play so vital in these games. It's Casper and Prism also still together in a nice position. Cheeps and Turtle, who had a better game in that last game, still in the lobby here as well. Nice shot onto Xantify from Turtle. Can he find the second? He can't quite. Xantify still getting health from this mist. Pretty difficult situation for Xantify as he's now down to HP. Turtle looking a little bit weak as well, and yep, down to the Storm. So it's a 2-tick. Was trying to drop into the box, but Cheeps shuts him down. And Turtle and Cheeps are still in the lobby, thankfully, after some great heroics from Cheeps. Not going to be easy, though. You can see where that zone's pulling. It's going to be a 5-tick when this one closes. So they've got to get in zone. They've got to do it now. They're going to have to use this piece to try and carry that through as well. Not an ideal circumstance for those guys, but they did manage to win that fight, which keeps them in the game. Super important. Oh no. Arius and iDrop, 100 damage below the threshold. It's so important that they can try and find as much of this damage as they possibly can. Look at this from them, yeah, they're just trying to find some shots. It's not going to be easy for them here. They're still 112 below, now getting tagged up by the Storm's surge, so it's not going to be a simple task, but these guys are two very experienced players here, Taco. They have what it takes, but they need to do it now.
They don't have any time to think about it any further. It's all about the action, quick and decisive. iDrop Medius just looking to see where they can manifest some form of a fight. The overdrive grenade, though, going to cause them to separate a little bit more than what they would have initially intended. Still only 40 below. Jug is going to keep Medius a little bit healthy, but they're going to be in tatters by the time they make it into this next edge of zone. It is now or never for both iDrop and Medius, and unfortunately the lobby seemingly taking notice of their position. iDrop not going to be able to survive. Got lobby focus in that final tick of surge, going to take him out for good, as now Medius, he will finally secure some tags, but at only 5 above, he's going to have to keep the ball rolling here. He's going to be able to at least collect the pizza that his duo left behind, but this is still tragic scenes all around Many. They would have loved to keep extending their placement position on the leaderboard, and now as a solo, it's so tough.
So much momentum going through the day. That's a nice knock there from Marius. Not going to do too much damage for that first initial damage, but the finish is going to be good there as well. 331 above the threshold. It's going to be Marius's time to solo clutch. Can he continue to keep moving them up the standings? Because they've been doing so well all day. This was a really important game for them just to solidify their spot in that top 5 as much as they could. They go down now, and it's going to be all over for this game, and they're not going to get any of those placement points that they so desperately need. And all the other players down below on the leaderboard are going to be starting to catch up. So every single move that Marius makes right now just has that added level of importance as Vico and Malabuka are continuing their push in this game as well. They managed to find themselves a good amount of damage to stay above the threshold and find the heals as well.
But it's been the builds that have been a constant thorn in the side for Malabuka and Vico. Things still aren't out of the thick of it just yet either for this duo. That's a good refresh, but only 120 above and some change. They're going to need a lot more to work with here, or for the lobby to continue taking itself out as Media is still trying to manifest something. But Vico, Malabuka, one more time, getting a look back into what kind of catapulted them a little bit higher up here. Just a nice sequence of knocks and eliminations. Tarps on the receiving end of that, but still so much more left to drive through here as Matty is doing a great job holding down his position in the low ground. Shark and Teeny, though, they have 870. It just continues to climb. I don't even know why I pointed out Jerdy going to be another one of those victims, and Mini, we just highlighted Zippy and Jerdy trying to solidify themselves in a great contention spot for the consistency on the leaderboard. But this is a huge problem when you're dealing with Teeny and Shark just absolutely rolling through this lobby. But look at Medias go. Nothing seems to deter him. He is fully locked in to prove to the doubters that iDrop and Medias have got what it takes to make it through.
Yeah, these are the sort of solo clutches that can qualify you to the major finals, and Marius is doing just that, just on the cusp of those placement points. So every single placement point that he gets right now is going to be so valuable for them. Cammy here and Chari just playing the backside of the zone, trying to get as much of this damage as possible before they then go ahead and make this rotation. You can see them just 250 above the threshold. They're just trying to do as much damage as they can to not have to worry about it. But look at this, Shark down, Teeny clutching up, gets the knock and gets the full elimination there onto Ziffy. And try and pull out the revive here as well. 7 eliminations for this team so far. This is the first time we've seen them in this game where they had a little bit of a wobble. It looks like they're going to be able to find that revive, and that's going to be crucial for them to continue plowing through this lobby and finding all the eliminations that they are. Doesn't seem to set them back too much either, and now Cammy finally uses that overdrive grenade to get towards the front side of zone and use all of that, all those builds that they were able to get from there.
But Cammy and Hadi are definitely feeling the pressure squeezing in on them because they are not in a very set position right now on the leaderboard. Maria is still, as a solo, though, just barely ticking above the surge threshold. But he's got a fairly solid loadout to continue climbing, clawing his way up those placement positions, just trying to stay tucked away, out of sight, out of mind mentality. And Sharktini from the knock revive now taking over the high ground entirely, completely stacked. Everyone else underneath them has to be on the lookout because they are just hunting. They're absolute fiends in this lobby right now. Medius, if he's not careful, if he overextends for just a moment, he's gonna find himself a victim unless he connects some nice shots. But playing through from the backside of zone, now gonna move towards front side. Be forced to drop a layer soon enough here unless he can manifest some kind of refresh, but it is just a tough position.
This though from Shark on the top of the screen, just absolutely going ham over there. These guys are the most well-equipped team right now to play high ground because they've got about 4.5 million eliminations in this game. Coupled with all the materials that they're now getting, Shark's just on a bit of a frenzy. He's just having fun as Teeny's just holding down the fort up on height. Shark's just fragging out down below. Marius, though, needing it all to do, done so well so far. Able to pop some Peter and get his way back inside of the zone. Decent amount of materials as well to try and play these mid-ground layers. This is all where it counts, though, for Marius. Getting pre-edited on from another angle. He's got to try and disengage and find another layer, which he does. But he's got to be so careful here. At every move he makes will just make sure that they can continue to stay in this game. Every single placement point that he gathers will continue to push them higher up in the standings. But he's doing so well so far. Sacco, this is so well done from Marius.
But now high overhead, looking down. Media still making it happen, though. Has a few more pizza slices to work with, too. Backs at his own one more time. He continues to kind of nestle his way in here, but Shark, Teeny, we're already hitting double digits here, Mini Miner. This is very reminiscent of seeing their off-season performances. Teeny and Shark just making it look too easy right now. Hardy Cammy. No materials. Marius, hardly any HP left to work with, but he's got that mythic pump. He might be able to find another siphon to work with. As Shark Teeny, they just continue to decimate the entirety of this lobby. Another one onto Pixovsky, and now Teeny, Shark, they have no intentions of slowing down.
Now it's Teeny that's fragging out. Shark now getting on the wall as well, trying to hop in the box. Perceives on the other side, just breaking all of these weak builds, trying to find his way through. Edit's come through as well, not able to connect with the shot. They want more. They're not happy with double digits. They want high double digits to Teeny and Shark, as they're now just infiltrating the rest of the lobby down on low ground. Really nicely done from them, as they're just continuing to rain down fire here. Top 5 situation, or top 4 situation, they're the only duo.
But look at what Marius has done this entire time. You wouldn't think that he'd been a solo for so long, and sure enough, Teeny, he'll actually find himself getting knocked. Marius doesn't have any builds remaining, but he might be able to collect the siphon. That could be the difference maker. He's now trying to circle around, see if he can pinpoint exactly where Shark is at, but Shark, he is on the run, but he's not going to be able to make it. iJob and Marius, forget about the consistency game. It's all the victory royale.
And a solo clutch from top 33 or whatever it was from Marius. That is absolutely huge for them. We were talking about it. We were saying, yeah, he just needs to try and squeeze out as many of these placement points as possible, retain their spot there in the sort of top 4, top 5 situation where they were. And they only go and win the thing. Unbelievable stuff for Marius, and that's what you need to qualify to the major finals. Analyst Des, take it away.
Thank you so much. An unbelievable call from our two casters there. And what a moment for Marius. Again, these guys have sort of been labeled the potential man team, it feels like, Reese. A lot of the time we expect big things from them. It hasn't quite happened. And today they have put on a really impressive showing and now winning game 3 to just secure that spot in the final.
Unbelievable. In particular, the fact that Marius literally did that by himself for the most part, right? iRob went down. When did he go down to Canada?
33rd place.
That's
and
wild.
Marius wins the game.
Almost won. Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, when you look at these two and how they've been playing, I mean, I guess you can't really say you're too surprised with how their day's been so far, Takar.
Yeah, I mean, we thought they were going to be contested originally, ended up being on-con, especially after Thomas got the VR and their contesters went to their drop. Other than that, though, I mean, I love to see them in the finals. Clutching up the win from your teammate going down to 30, or going down in 33rd is ridiculous. Like, the moving zones hadn't even begun. Almost the end game hadn't even begun. He lost his teammate, and he clutches up all the way to the win. It's insane.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to actually know how this ended up happening, right? Because you saw this game started pretty poorly for them because they were below surge for the vast majority there. They were struggling, and they were at the backside with a max zone pool. It's basically the worst scenario you could get in a game, especially of this caliber. But what they ended up doing was they ended up using an overdrive grenade to go from the backside to somewhere in the middle early. Unfortunately, that meant iDrop went down. But because Marius is near the front, that means he could absolutely wreck everyone else for surge, who's coming late after them. And that got him above from like 100 below to like 300 above, and then just the solo clutch dominated from after that.
We've been bigging up all the talent in the lobby, and it's fair to say Marius has been one of the biggest talents in this region over the past year and a half, and showcasing it here in 2026's FNCS circuit. I'm super excited to see what those two can do in the major finals, given some more time to prepare, and I'm sure all of you will be too. We have still 2 more games left, and so we're going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up and secure all our qualification spots.
Many tags they taking from me. This one right here's only for me. cut back to back. Oh, oh, just like that. I see a dub in my future stats. Oh, I know a place you can go. The doghouse outside my massive abode. It's lovely, it's cushy, and sometimes it's cold. And watch me get this gold. Oh, I just want it all. I just want it all. Bounce, bounce back. Said you want it all. Said you want it all. Said you want it all. Bounce back. Said you want it all. Said you want it all. I can have it all. If you knock me down, I'll move to the floor. I'll just step back up. Bounce back. I just want it all. I just want it all. I'll keep bouncing. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. I keep coming back. I can't hold it back. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. I keep coming back. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. I can't hold it back. Yeah, I'm bouncing back. I keep coming back.
If you just missed that last game, you missed one of the better solo clutches you were going to see from anybody in Fortnite this season from Marius. An impressive game. But we still have more action to come, and we still have plenty of hungry duos in this lobby looking to secure a slot. I don't know whether to describe this next team as hungry or not, because Shark and Teeny, I mean, they're just playing with a lot of freedom, we'll say, Takara.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you got full after eating up Pink and Sado at the start with those elims, but hey, what they did do is make it look like a reload match when they were on height, okay? From the early game to the mid game to the late game, they were non-stop keying, non-stop picking up eliminations. I mean, this team was making it look easy.
Yeah, I think one of my, I don't want to toot my own horn, but one of the predictions I said was if they do good, they're going to go crazy. If they do bad, they're going to go crazy. I mean, it's a pretty easy prediction to make, let's be honest. But I think one of those is coming true, because these guys dropped 15 eliminations, and we're literally just fragging out. You could see, like, shockwaving onto height. I keep calling them shockwaves. They're overdrive grenades. I've been doing this the whole season so far. Overdrive grenades up onto height. Someone's nearby. They just jump on some whatever it is. You saw the whole end game for the most part. Teeny was just on height, and at the same time, Shark was down like 4 layers, just pickaxing on walls, full piecing everyone. These guys are just playing for fun. Like, it's a 5-game format. They don't want to end at game number 3. They got 2 more games of Fortnite to play.
I think Teeny got a bit jealous of Shark at the end there, started dropping down himself to start fragging out as well, and picked up more than Shark had. I mean, you could see to the double digits, one after another. And, unfortunately, after that, Teeny did get knocked. Shark happened to the best of us, forgot he had a chug, went to the zone, is what it is.
So I'm gonna quickly just write that down. Resub 2026. If they do good, they're gonna go crazy. I mean, wow, this is the analysis we get on the Resub YouTube channel. I mean, look, one thing you have to say is we got to give credit to Teeny, because a lot of the time Shark gets all the plaudits and Teeny doesn't quite get it. Another team we have to talk about, because I think we've all been expecting maybe a bit more out of them in this lobby so far, is Vico and Malabuka. Again, not a catastrophic game by any means. They're still in the running to be there for consistency, but I think we want to see a bit more from these guys in this lobby, Takara.
We do. I mean, they started off incredibly strong. They got a top 5 finish, and after that, it's been a little iffy. 15th, 12th. This is what we were talking about earlier on. Due to their playstyle, they need to look for refreshes. They're using a lot of mats. They're consistently rotating early, and it's a bit risky if you have to do that. Now, both players are legends in not only EU competitive, just Fortnite competitive overall. So I would like to see a little less mistakes come from these players. Both of them are incredibly good individually. They can clutch up, but I want to see that synergy continue on until they start getting top 10s instead of going down in the middle end of the match.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like Reese, when it comes to these two, right? You obviously know a lot about them. I know you have great relationships with both of their players. At this point in the competition, are you starting to worry about their mental and how that's going to affect their ability to stay consistent?
Absolutely not. They are, removing all of the teams who've already qualified through Victory Royales, they're third. you know, top 10 qualifies. We've got 2 games left. I'm not really concerned about them at all. And you look at like the rest of the lobby as well, like the teams who are of the highest caliber in here are already basically being the most consistent already, and there is a bit of a drop off to some of the quality of the teams underneath. So, you know, do I think the next 2 games they're just going to completely fall off and make a huge mistake? No. It's because the games they're still getting a bunch of elims. Out of everyone that's left in this lobby, outside of Shark and Tini, obviously, they have the most eliminations so far. So, you know, still not worried about them. Just some, you know, not fantastic games.
Okay, not time to panic yet for Vico Malabuka. We've watched a couple games now, boys, right? And so the question is, if you're one of those teams lower down in the leaderboards and maybe consistency is starting to look out of reach for you, how are you winning a game in this lobby? What are the trends here? What are the key tactics we're going to have to see people pull out in order to be successful and win one of these last 2 games to Carter?
So one of the common strategies we've seen is combining that Flowberry Mist with the Overdrive Grenade. Now, we've seen it happen probably at least once every single match today. It launches you incredibly high up in the end game, and it's good for height retakes. The issue is, from what I've seen, the duos that end up doing these height retakes don't hold height until the end of the match. Maybe they run out of materials, they get a little too aggressive with the fight, they get chopped down after, but they're gonna have to make some sort of play like that. Stay in Storm, go for the height retake, but hold it throughout the rest of the match.
Yeah, I think in order to do that, they need to have a better earlier game, because a lot of the problems with these teams who aren't doing bad is they're not even making it to the end game to start with. So the main theme we've seen through the most successful teams is they're getting a refresh, they're getting a fight into something around that 6th or 7th zone. So if you're down on the leaderboards, you're probably not just going to make the best rotates of all time coming into this 4th game all of a sudden, because it's a tough lobby. So what you need to do is get on the walls, get in someone's boxes, get yourself some mats, and then get on height.
Well, when you describe what you're describing, Reese, could you see that coming from Cammy and Hari? Again, 2 names who many people would have expected to see qualify through, maybe potentially already at this point. Again, they're not out of it, right? They're still in the running. They're still looking good when it comes to consistency. Can they do what you just said there?
If I was going to offer up advice to Cammy and Hari, it would do not get on the walls, do not get on height, and do not get involved in the box. Because these guys are currently 8th, which, you know, if you remove the top 3 teams, means they're 5th. So they're midway through the qualification already. Like, they're fine. They're also, let's be real, they're not the teams who's getting in box. They're not the team who's the Shark and Teeny net. They're the, I don't want to say pacifists. That's a little rude. I don't want to be that guy. But they're the classic Polish playstyle. We know what they are at this point. So, no, they've just got to keep playing what they are. And, you know, maybe unless this next game totally goes wrong.
Well, hopefully they listen to your advice, Reese Hub. Taco, Mini, take it away. Let's see what these guys cook up in game number 4.
Thank you so much, Levin. Cammy and Hari, 15 elimination height win upcoming. We got game number 4 coming for you guys right now. Maybe we will see that, who knows? But the trends are looking really, really good for those guys in particular, but also for some of our teams that have already qualified through. Really, really exciting endgames so far today, Tackle. We've had some crazy storylines, solo clutches. It seems to have had it all, and we still got 2 more to go.
Yeah, the proof's in the pudding, that's for sure. Even if you are a solo, it's not to say that you still couldn't manage to find a huge come-up moment. I think Marias is probably the best example that we're going to be able to actually witness here today, Minnie. But Game 4, just on the horizon, and I'm definitely excited to see who our last couple of Victory Royale lobby winners are going to be and how that's actually going to impact the consistency metrics, because you never know. Somebody that might be hovering in that current 6th to 10th place on the leaderboard, they might find a Victory Royale, and then that jumps everybody else up along the way. So teams definitely trying to bank all their last shots on these last couple of moments.
That's going to be interesting. I'm looking at the leaderboard as well. We've got Vico Malabuka in the mix, Cringe and Twy as well. Really excited to see those guys potentially popping off right now. A team that I've got my eyes on. Of course, the UK lads themselves. Really excited to see what they can actually do, because, of course, we want to see players like Twy, up-and-comers that maybe haven't made enough of those grand finals or made enough of a statement in those grand finals previously to actually qualify through this season. This is the perfect opportunity for them. Maybe the nerves are going to be shaking a little bit for those teams, but for Vico Malabuka, not at all, you have to imagine.
You gotta be steady throughout these final lobbies, because this is really where things can just be thrown for a loop. You never know if a team is going to try and maybe just do that all-out aggressive style, because we know teams like Shark and Teeny, sure, they love to be aggressive. Sure, we know what they're capable of for their fighting potential, but some of these other duos that aren't inside that consistency metric, again, their best odds are going to be trying to fare for the Victory Royale. And if that's the case, Minnie, I mean, at that point, you can never really bank on anything because height already looks like doom and despair at times because of that Flowberry Fizz, Overdrive Grenade, retake method, and it definitely seems to be a point of contention, but with some of the teams that have been removed from the lobby, Media is now being one of those duos. I'm almost anticipating that height's going to be even more difficult to hold because Shark and Teeny, they seem like they had a really firm grasp on it in that last lobby.
Yeah, it's going to get even more messy. And I really like what Reese broke down there just as we were going into this fourth game was that you need to have a good mid game. That earlier stage of the game is so important for teams that want to try and play height effectively. But unfortunately, at this point, as we get towards these last stage of the competition, there'll be teams that haven't had a good mid game, that haven't really set themselves up for success, that are still trying to go up for height as well, that are still using that shockwave grenade or that overdrive grenade combined with the fizz to actually try and take height and just try and gung-ho and just try and all full send height. So we'll see how that goes in the future. We're going to go back to the desk right now, though, just for a short.
Not quite the face you're expecting to see, but don't panic, don't you worry. We will be back into the game as soon as we can be. We're going to go to a break, and when we are back, we will be hitting you with game number 5, ready to see who can qualify for the Major 1 finals out of Heat 1.
cut back to back. Oh, oh, just like that. I see a dub in my future stats. Oh, I know a place you can go. The doghouse outside my massive abode. It's lovely, it's cushy, and sometimes it's cold. And watch me get this gold. Oh, I just want it all. I just want it all. Bounce, bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. Said you want it all. Bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. I can have it all if you know too fast. Oh, oh, just like that. I see a dub in my future stats. Oh, I know a place you can go. The doghouse outside my massive abode. It's lovely, it's cushy, and sometimes it's cold. And watch me get this gold. Oh, own it all, own it all. How bounce back? I just want it all. I just want it all. Bounce, bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. Said you want it all. Bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. I can have it all. If you knock me down, I'll move to the floor. up back to back. Oh, oh, just like that. I see a dub in my future stats. Oh, I know a place you can go. The doghouse outside my massive abode. It's lovely, it's cushy, and sometimes it's cold. Now sit and watch me get this gold. Oh, I want it all, I want it all. How bounce back? I just want it all, I just want it all. I'm gon' bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. Said you want it all, bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. I can have it all if you know too fast. Oh, oh, just like that. I see a dub in my future stats. Oh, I know a place you can go. The doghouse outside my massive abode. It's lovely, it's cushy, and sometimes it's cold. And watch me get this gold. Oh, I just want it all. I just want it all. Bounce, bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. Said you want it all. Bounce back. Said you want it all, but you want it all. I can have it all if you know crank up back to back. Oh, oh, just like that. I see a dub in my future stats. Oh, I know a place you can go. The doghouse outside my massive abode. It's lovely, it's cushy, and sometimes it's cold. Now sit and watch me get this gold. Oh, I just want it all. I just want it all. get back to back. Oh, oh, just like us. I see a dub in my future stats. Oh, I know a place you can go. The doghouse outside my massive.
Welcome back here to FNCS Heat 1, and we appreciate your patience there. We worked through some issues. We are going to be jumping into game number 4 right here, Taco. It's been a little while, but we are hyped up for it, ramped up for it. Conversations going into it. You know, Cammy and Shari inside of that top 5 qualification right now. Of course, we have consistency and victory royales that matter here. It's going to be exciting, though. Who's going to do it?
A little bit of a rejuvenation period even for some of these teams, but game 4, I mean, we're ready to hop right in, and sure enough, Mini gonna have to ban the conversation elsewhere because Pink, Sato under a lot of duress. It's Turtle and Cheeps that they've chosen to get a little bit aggressive on early here in lobby 4.
Yeah, this is an interesting situation for Cheeps and Turtle, for them to be in this sort of position as we sort of get a replay from the other side of the map. It's Elise and it's Bari who nicely clean up over there on the east side of the map. That was nicely done from them, but yeah, that's important, what you need for these certain off-spawn certain situations.
Yeah, definitely not what Chucks and Bellary wanted to see on their screens. The full elimination by Artiste and Linux, or Kiro, excuse me, it's going to make it all the more problematic. They're really going to have to bank on that 5th game to be their opportunity to lock in for this Major 1 finals. But things aren't slowing down anytime soon. Battlewood Boulevard just continuing to heat up here. Neutral and Mexo doing what they can. They've got a little bit of an overhead leverage here, but Cheesy and Gold, they have been non-stop kind of holding this other duo at bay. These two teams just always caught in the mix with each other.
It's a difficult one. I mean, this is such a big POI. It's just so easy for you to sort of find little buildings and areas to hide, so these fights can drag on a little bit, which of course opens the door for third parties coming in. Maybe from the south you can see a couple of those pink arrows right there representing another team. So these are the sort of fights that you do need to make sure that when they do start to boil over, it goes quickly. And hopping onto the other side of the map, it's Shark and Teeny against Turtle and Cheeps. Going to be a big fight here. It looks as though Shark and Teeny have not had any cobwebs now. They've continuing to plow on like they've been doing all day. Just unbelievable aggression from them, and it looks like actually, as we say that, they are just going to disengage here. They are our front runners in terms of consistency. They've been so aggressive, getting elimination after elimination in every single game that they've been in. They've had 28 eliminations so far. To put it into context, the team that had the second most eliminations was iDrop and Marius, and they've already qualified through. So it's an unbelievable gap that they are forging now between them and the rest of the lobby.
Teeny was still lingering, though. A little bit of unfinished business, it might seem. Maybe they'd been looking for that Pink Sato aggression that they'd been able to kind of take over in that last lobby. But trouble brewing right now for Cheesy and Gold. Battlewood Boulevard, though, the third parties overhead. Nero and Josh, they see prime opportunity to strike for a little bit of surge damage, and they've got the elevation, but what they need is to connect with some shots. And there's also a team a little bit further north from their position, just hanging out on the hillside. This is a hard box fight to make happen just because of all these teams in the surrounding area. But Cheesy, he's going to find a nice tag there. It's going to cause a little bit of a scramble here now. But Cheesy, he's still looking to try and drop in Shark from the next side. And these teams are just taking what they can out of these fights.
Cheesy manages to close out right there. That's nicely done from him. And again, though, like I was saying, they've got to be careful of these third parties.
Yeah, they're definitely looking for it.
Definitely looking for it there, and it was good work from them to close out that fight. This is it, though. Cammy and Shari rotating on through. This is a big moment for them because, of course, you know, they're not in danger necessarily, but they do need to continue the progression that they've been having. I mean, they want to try and retain their spot in that top 5. And, of course, they are just on the cusp of that. Of course, 8th on the leaderboard right now. Remember, our first three are going to be the teams that have already qualified through over 1,000 points. If you are slightly confused when looking at those standings. And they're just on the cusp, so big game for them. Both of these last games matter, and likewise for Casper and Prism, who have had a somewhat okay day, but nothing to shout about. And Shark and Teeny are going to continue on their elimination front with the first elimination of the game for them.
It doesn't help that Wonky Lamb being one of the legendary POIs. They'll waste absolutely no time in swiftly taking out Atrix. Now wondering where Bambi might be at, given that his duo has already been eliminated. And Shark Teeny, we've already seen what they're capable of just in that last matchup alone. They are looking for full-on elimination sprees here.
Yep, that's what they do. That's how they're choosing to roll, and I don't think they're going to be winning a game unless maybe they go for a little Game 5 win. Why not? Put the cherry on the cake, as Yapko and Panzer looking to make a bit of a play right here. They've already got their elimination in the game, but they want more. As Calais on the other side of the wall. It's not going to be an easy fight. Looks like they're maybe just trying to get some of this loot. I think this is a sort of remnants of a previous fight that has gone on, and maybe they don't want to fight the other team here. You can see it from the other perspective. Neither team looks like they're too interested in fighting here. It looks like Yapko and Panzer just wanted a little bit of that loot, a slice of it, to claim for themselves there.
But if they can get the elimination points, I don't think they'd be against it either, especially not with Focus having his shields drop so incredibly low. His HP, a couple of splashes are definitely going to have to come into the mix.